Hello. Hello, are we here? Are we alive? I didn't accidentally end the stream again. Oh, I see why it ended the stream now. That's actually really annoying. Okay, I'll have to keep that in mind. Um, okay, but hey everybody, welcome. So we're continuing this, the Jaru reaction series. Hopefully this is gonna be just a 2 episode thing. I really don't wanna overdo it, but I felt a compulsion, a deep, depraved need to respond to specifically this video. Hold on, I'm gonna move myself because I'm blocking the title. If you can see it now underneath me, the player is not part of Deltarune's narrative. I felt, yes, a drive to respond to this of all things. So today we're gonna just jump into it. Just jump into it. This is a lot shorter, so I don't know if we're gonna be doing a full. I don't know. Maybe we might sneak in another one of his shorter theories. Maybe I don't know how long this is gonna be, but I think I'm gonna try and focus on just the one. It depends on how quickly we get through this. Hopefully, I won't end up skipping like 90% of it, like I did for the last video. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna just get into this. Take a look at this one because yeah, this one is a big. Sorry, it's a big point of contention for me. I very strongly disagree with this. So uh, let's get into it, and yeah, we'll just start right off. So I'm gonna go full screen, and we're gonna go ahead as is standard. We're gonna set that to 1.75. I think skipping 90% of a jar theory is like a rite of passage. Yeah, I mean, where's the lie though? So I'm a professional. I promised myself I was gonna try to be nice, but I feel like that was a little. I feel like that was a little harsh to start off, to kick off. But we're gonna jump into it now. So let's take a listen, and I'm gonna be pausing pretty frequently just to let all of you know, because I don't want to just be freebooting Jaru's content. I want to be adding commentary. So if I don't have much to say, I might add something, or I might skip by it, because yeah, I don't want to just freeboot the guy's video. I want this to be bringing something to the table at least. So anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. I know I've said that a couple times now, but I just want to make sure we cover everything before we start. So let's begin.
Hello, my name is Jaru, and today I'm talking about Deltarune. There will be major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale, so please play them both before watching this. In this video, I will be discussing the difference between a narrative and a meta-narrative within the context of video gaming. I will also be discussing how the idea of the player being a part of Deltarune's narrative is not only incorrect, but would be explicitly bad for Deltarune if it were true. Now, if hearing me say that...
Oh... If hearing me say that makes you want to rush to the comments to leave a scathing remark, we don't know what he's gonna say, but yeah, I'll be honest, I'm feeling the urge to rush to the comments to leave a scathing remark. But yeah, oh man, I mean, this is good structure. I kind of mentioned last time how I noticed a lot of his newer videos were way shorter, and also I'm noticing it's actually easier to tell that the video is sped up. Like for the last one, I could not tell that the video was sped up when I was listening to it, and it felt like it was actually being slowed down when I listened at normal speed. Like, sorry, that sounds kind of silly, but it felt like it was actually at half speed when listening to it at normal speed. And listening to it at 1.75 times faster felt like listening to it at normal speed. But this one feels a lot faster, a lot better paced. I gotta say, really genuinely like this intro. Really well structured intro in terms of I disagree with the premise, but I'm saying genuinely really good structure for the intro. Really like that. So Jaru is learning and growing, and we love to see that. And like this is not coming from a place of sarcasm or anything like that. I 100% with my full heart. Absolutely glad to see this. Happy to see this. Great work. Fantastic work.
Makes you want to rush to the comments to leave a scathing remark, then please wait and listen. The idea of a meta-narrative in a video game is...
Alright, so we're going to the comments to leave a scathing remark. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing. Okay. So sorry, I wanted to make that joke to like scroll down to the comments to leave something. Uh. Okay. So anyway, sorry, I was just checking out the comment there. So let's let him make his point. I apologize. I got distracted there reading his comment.
Complex and niche, which means there's a good chance that what I mean when I use the term and what you think I mean are not one and the same. As such, I merely ask that you give me a chance to explain myself.
Sorry, the praying Patrick caught me off guard. I was not prepared for low. Well, okay, to be fair, I'm kind of watching this in low quality. 30p. Only 720? Holy cow. Okay. I'm kind of surprised. Oh, so I thought my stream died and you were just quiet. Yeah, no, I got distracted reading the top comment. Okay, sorry. I'm going to rewind a little bit just to make sure we get this. So he's got his own definition of meta-narrative, which I feel like I'm going to take some issue with. Maybe. We'll see.
I use the term and what you think I mean are not one and the same. As such, I merely ask that you give me a chance to explain myself before you go roasting me on social media. But before we dive in, I'd just like to leave a quick call to action regarding my Ko-fi and
Nah, you're not chilling. You're not chilling on my watch. You're not chilling on my watch. I'm kidding. If you want to support Jaru, a man's got to make a living. I'm sorry. That might have been a little harsh of me, but I don't know. I'm not... Yeah, if you support Jaru's channel, if you want to send him some money, I 100% agree with that. Go ahead, do that. You know what? Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we're going to go back. We're going to scroll back. We're just going to say, here's his Ko-Fi. Here's his Patreon. I mean, you know what to search up. Go ahead if you want to support him. Give him some support. Show him some love. Because, yeah, we're not about hating on here. If you're trying to get that bread, you like, I understand. I would like to be able to make a living off of my videos still. I'm not able to do that yet. I don't have nearly the traction. But, so you know what? He's trying to get that bread. I can't hate on him for that.
Missing my rent payment ever again. Anything you can donate would be greatly appreciated, and even if you can't, I'm still quite grateful for you watching my content. I may be begging for money, but don't think I've forgotten just how much y'all have done.
Okay.
Part of Deltarune's narrative. Firstly, we need to define what it is we are talking about.
No,
What is
no.
the difference between a narrative and a meta-narrative? Well, that depends on what medium of art you are looking at, and it also depends on who you ask. But this video is not about art history. This is about Deltarune. So instead of arguing semantics regarding what a meta-narrative quote-unquote really is, I'm just going to give the terms my own definitions, so that way we are perfectly clear regarding what it is I'm saying.
Okay.
A narrative is simply the plot of a game. It is what the fictional characters in their fictional world are getting up to. Where things get confused.
Okay, Yeah, I think so. I think... Hello, Angelo's Random Facts. Yeah, we're doing another Jaru React here. Okay, so sorry, I just want to say, the narrative. I kind of... I don't know. People might be more art savvy than me when it comes to writing. I know a bit about writing, but so I might... This might be a nitpicky thing again of me, but... I'm not sure if I feel like the narrative might include more than this. Because, like, if a story... Well, I guess... I'm trying to think of the word. There might be another word for the larger, like, subtext and themes and stuff. Where, okay, so no, I can agree with this. Yeah, I was getting mixed up for a second there. So yeah, no, I can agree with this definition.
Using is with the idea of a meta-narrative. Now, to be clear, when I refer to Deltarune's meta-narrative, I am not talking about the game's themes. A theme, for those not aware, is a central idea in a piece of literature that recurs throughout the story. For example, Undertale has pacifism as one of its core themes, but that's not what I'm referring to when discussing the meta-narrative. For the purposes of this video, the term meta-narrative will be defined as follows. A narrative or plot that...
Okay, so, Cookie just said, narrative should include themes, plot is what I think he's describing. Okay, so yeah, I'm not fully certain about the terminology, but I would kind of agree with that idea that there's two concepts where I think that is a pretty decent one. Again, there might be someone who knows more about like writing history and could properly give the names of these, but yeah, I do think like plot in terms of what literally happens in locations, the dialogue that's said, versus narrative, which is the larger story, including themes, because I at least to me, yeah, it kind of feels like it's hard to talk about narrative without talking about the themes. I was actually thinking about this in regards to a completely different game. I don't want to get too into it because I would have to like describe the entire plot of the game, and that would be slowing things down a bit. But yeah, if you are disconnected from the themes of a game and you're trying to talk about the story, you're gonna miss out on so much. Not just even for games, for like movies and books as well. If you don't engage with the themes, then you're gonna be missing out on a massive impact, a massive portion of the narrative, which I think is really important to discuss. So that I don't know if that's where this is gonna go. I just kind of wanna. That's a bit of a red flag that's popping up right at the bat that I want to just mark and identify right before we get into it.
That is focused on or heavily emphasizes the relationship between the player and the video game. Now, you may be wondering, how is this different from a regular narrative? Well, let's take an example. In Super Mario, the narrative of
Okay, actually, let's scroll back and let's look at this. Okay. This I'm actually gonna we're gonna pull a jar and we're gonna dictionary.com this. Okay. So let's see. So his definition. So we got some more comments from Cookie. So narrative includes narration, the narration of the author over the plot, because the author gives flavor and context, which creates a narrative out of plot. Again, in my opinion. So yeah, it's just. And then I think his definition of meta narrative is kind of overly specific. So let's sit down and let's compare these. So a narrative or plot that is focused on or heavily emphasizes the relationship between the player and the video game. So this is his definition specifically for video games. So we have to keep that in mind. So if we're not going to point and laugh for differences because it specifies video game player, let's take a look at what this is. A narrative account that experiments with or explores the idea of storytelling, often drawing attention to its own artificiality. And an overarching account or interpretation of events and circumstances that leads to a pattern or structure. Okay, so this we're gonna ignore this one. We're gonna ignore this bottom one because that doesn't really fit what we're talking about here. So the relationship between the player. So I do agree that it is kind of specific because he's saying the relationship between the player and the video game, whereas I think meta narrative. I know I just said that we don't want to like. So yeah, the issue is not that he's specifying the player in the video game. The issue is that it's the interaction between the player and the medium when it's more broadly about storytelling. Now, I can kind of understand. I understand to a degree because this is talking about Deltarune specifically, which is Deltarune definitely deals with, I think, the relationship between the player and the video game. So I think I just kind of want to clarify that and draw attention to that because this might seem kind of nitpicky, but I want to have our baseline really clearly defined before we go in because I feel like it's going to come back up. Maybe it won't. Maybe I will have wasted your time, but this is a live reaction. So I apologize in advance. I'm going to hide back to chat real quick. We got some more messages. So a meta-narrative is essentially a narrative about the concept of stories. Yep, like we read there. Narrative about a narrative, hence the meta. Sorry I'm talking so much. I just love this topic. Absolutely no problem. Love having chat share things with me. So let's continue on here. Let's keep going. Let's see what he's going to say.
Game. Now, you may be wondering, how is this different from a regular narrative? Well, let's take an example. In Super Mario, the narrative of that game is that Bowser has kidnapped Princess Peach and Mario needs to save her. That is the plot of the game. It has nothing to do with the player or our relationship with this game. The player may control Mario, but we are not acknowledged within the story. As far as Mario, Peach, and Bowser are concerned, the player does not exist and is not relevant. In other words, this game has a regular narrative, but it has no meta-narrative. This is pretty much the norm for most video games. But that does raise the question, what is the opposite of that? What is a game where the regular narrative is nearly or completely absent while the meta-narrative is the main focus? Well, a great example of that is the Stanley Parable. The narrative of this game is borderline non-existent. You play as a man called Stanley, who steps out of his office to realize that all of his coworkers have gone missing. Your goal is to discover what has happened to them. You know this is your goal because the disembodied narrator tells you that is your goal. All of his coworkers were gone.
Okay, so I'm going to pause real quick just to add in and to comment. I'm very curious what he's going to say because, yeah, he's rightfully pointing out that uh, the Stanley Parable is a very meta game. And now, I don't know if he's going to argue that he can't get invested in the Stanley Parable's world, because I would actually sort of agree with that. Put down your pitchforks. Don't kill me yet. Don't. There's not really a lot of investment in the Stanley Parable in terms of like getting invested in the world. It's more so these concepts. You don't really get invested in the world of Stanley Parable. You get invested in the concepts. But I would say there's a difference between getting invested in the world and getting invested in the game. Because you can get really invested into the game Stanley Parable, but you're probably not going to be that invested in the world, because the world isn't even consistent, really. Like, there's different endings that kind of contradict each other. And that's kind of the point, is because the meta aspect of it. I don't want to get too much into it. You should absolutely play the Stanley Parable for yourself. Yeah, I got another comment here. The point of technically there is a base narrative in Stanley Parable, but it exists to build the base themes that the meta narrative then explores to the point of farce. The point of Stanley Parable is to be a conversation between the game and the player in a way that other games really don't do. Yeah, exactly. That's part of the engagement of it. Like I said there, you don't engage with the world, you engage with the game, and that's what makes it such an interesting experience.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
The narrator comments on everything you do and every choice you make, often sarcastically. Doing anything other than following the plot of his story will result in him mocking you. However, his plot and his story are paper thin, and the game knows it. If you look out the windows, it's just a white void. If you go down alternative paths, you can end up in places with unfinished developer textures. Heck, if you piss the narrator off enough, he might just kick you out of his game altogether and force you to play Minecraft instead. This is because the Stanley Parable is purely focused on its meta-narrative. The plot of Stanley and his coworkers does not matter. All the game cares about is messing with your expectations of what a video game experience should entail. It is a comedy first and foremost, with the target for its humor being all the tropes in and around video games. This is a great example of a game that has zero interest in telling a conventional story. Heck, even though you play as Stanley, the narrator talks to the player directly most of the time. In one iconic moment, if you go AFK in this broom closet, then the narrator will sarcastically remark that the player must have died. He'll then call out loudly for some other player to remove your corpse and continue playing the game. There are, of course, other games that focus on a meta-narrative without being a comedy. The horror genre in particular has been a popular spot for developing meta-narratives. Games like I'm Scared pretend to hack your computer and force you to interact with game files, just to give an example. The Stanley Parable and I'm Scared are very different games, but in both cases, the main appeal is how these games play with your expectations by directly involving the player in the story. One is a comedy while the other is a horror, but both emphasize their meta-narrative. That said, I'm sure you're asking what any of this has to do with Undertale or Deltarune. Well, you see, Toby Fox did something rather unique when he developed Undertale. While there have been games in the past that have integrated meta-narrative elements, they usually fell into one of two categories. Either A, they only poke the fourth wall a little bit and instead mostly focus on a regular narrative, or B, they focus almost entirely on the meta-narrative while largely ignoring or excluding any sort of normal plot.
I'm trying to think. I feel like there have been other games it's done. Cookie, if you want to keep going, that's fine. I'm cool with like having a bunch of stuff in chat to talk about. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, I kind of get the sense of where he's going, where it's kind of this this one or the other thing. And it actually reminds me a lot of, this is going to sound like a really weird comparison, but it reminds me a lot of people who critiqued Steven Universe for having a style that was a bit of a mix of episodic and overarching story. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but a lot of people critique Steven Universe for not sticking to one, either doing full episodic or doing like full commitment to story. And it's the kind of thing where it's a little bit silly. And again, I might be jumping the gun here, but this is kind of, like I said, where I think this is going. It's kind of like trying to create a dichotomy of having one or the other. And I don't really think, like, I don't know if Undertale even was the first. I'm trying to think. I think, well, because I'm not as familiar with some games. I'm not as familiar with the quirky RPG genre. But I'm trying to think here. I'm trying to think. And yeah, I don't know. Gravity Falls kind of. Yeah. Some people like would say that Gravity Falls needs to pick one or the other to be episodic or story focused, but you don't need to. So yeah, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I don't think it has to pick one or the other. If that is where this ends up going. Cookie saying, "Bro, I'm sorry. I'm tempted to hop in a call with you." Chat, should I crash Salt's stream by going on call with him? I'm so tempted. You know what? If you want to get on stream, if you want to hop on chat. We're gonna some to all the people who are listening on PC and you use Discord. I'm really sorry about this. You're about to get you are about to get Discord sounds. I think maybe. Oh wait, no, I'm in streamer mode, so it might be muted. Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, I did the call too early. That's my bad. Chat, we're gonna be back in just a second. We're waiting. So in the meantime, yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know. Is anybody else in chat? If you can think of any games that kind of played around more with the meta aspect, I guess because Jaru's kind of saying games that didn't talk about it or games that fully committed. I'm trying to think of some games that kind of partway committed. Elevator music plays as I dig for my wire. Yeah, no worries. Casually hijacking this. No, yeah, I'm glad to be able to have this discussion because it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be fun. Yeah, because I don't know. I had this idea pop into my. Well, okay. When did One Shot come out? I don't know. Some people might. I haven't actually fully played through it yet, so please don't spoil it for me. But I don't know if I would say it fully commits from what I played so far. Like it does have a narrative that kind of, I don't know. Like it feels very much like what Jaru is. Okay, it came out in 2014. So then Undertale was 2015. So a One Shot might be a good example of what he's talking about. You don't know this one, but Thimbleweed Park, I'd say. Okay. Oh yeah. So I'm not familiar with that one. I might take a look at that. I might check it out. But yeah, that is well because Alamander is saying a bit after. Never mind. Yeah, I think because there's One Shot World Edition, or I'm sorry, I'm probably to all the One Shot fans out there, I'm probably getting the name wrong. I can't remember. It's One Shot World Edition or World something, or that was like a re-release that came out a little later. But yeah. Okay, hold on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Chat. I can hear you. Can chat confirm? I don't have a little icon for you, so it's just gonna be this disembodied voice in my head.
Shit, I don't have a little icon for myself either. Hold on. Let me send you a
I don't know. Can I do that?
Can this be my image on stream? Hold on. You just put the PNG somewhere.
Okay, let me chat. Hold on a sec. We gotta sort this out.
Okay, I think RD says he can hear me.
Okay,
now I'm
good.
dealing with chat delay as well.
Okay, can I
This is such a mess. Also, if anybody hears crackling, no, you don't. My mic is perfectly fine. There are no problems here.
You will be instantly banned if you complain about. Okay,
Banned. It's
you know what? You're gonna be
late
very
for me,
tiny,
so...
and you're gonna be on my head.
Perfect. That is exactly what I want. Anyway, I do have to say it is very late for me, so I will try to I will try to be subdued in my tone. So apologies to chat if I start mumbling or becoming incomprehensible at some point.
Okay.
The tiny V on your head is actually fucking hilarious. Cookie is crackle free, thank fucking God. But yeah, no, something I actually wanted to add to the whole discussion Jaru has about meta narratives here is that he's pointing at games like the Stanley Parable and I'm Scared, which specifically lack a player character, which I think would be my biggest critique of his comparing them to Deltarune and Undertale. Because Undertale and Deltarune absolutely do have a player character that is still also experiencing the meta narrative between the author and the game and the player. Something I would actually, I'm so sorry I'm bringing this up, but a good comparison would actually be fucking Homestuck, because Homestuck has. Oh, I'm also sorry about swearing in your stream.
Okay.
I can't hold back from swearing. Homestuck is actually a good comparison here because Homestuck was the type of meta narrative to essentially address the reader as a reader while still having player characters and characters within its narrative that interact with the narrative itself. It's a whole convoluted, complicated mess, but I absolutely. I kind of disagree with his verdict that games can only have one narrative or be meta narrative, because technically you can read a meta narrative into any narrative, right?
Well,
even his example of Mario saving the princess and Bowser and all that shit, like even there you can read a meta narrative into the story if you insert yourself as a player entity into it. In that sense that it's no longer about Mario being the hero, it's about him being influenced to be a hero. Once again, that's a whole point that Homestuck makes about its hero characters, but it's this thing where why is that guy here? I am here to crash the fucking stream. It's my stream now. Hello. But yeah, no, it's this thing about how like you can construct a meta narrative out of anything, and I think Jaru's very specific view of a meta narrative puts emphasis on the player isn't true, because a meta narrative specifically invites a player rather than exaggerating the player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I will say, to give a brief defense, I don't. It kind of seems like the direction he's going is that one or the other. We've kind of jumped the gun a little bit here, although I feel reasonably confident. Also, hello Ruby, welcome to chat. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think that it's. I guess we'll see where it goes, but it definitely feels kind of weirdly to be. Sorry, I love you dropping messages in chat while we're going.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna press play again. We're gonna dive right in, and we're gonna see. It's gonna be a little weird for you because it'll probably be delayed.
Yeah, my view of Jaru is delayed.
Yeah.
Shit.
So just hold on. It's gonna be a little awkward, but I will pause at some point, and I guess I'll lead the way here. I don't know. Maybe you could try syncing up with me on your end and like watching and pausing when I do, but I think you might just have to deal with the delay.
I might just have to deal with the delay. Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I could stream to you, maybe. No, but Discord hates.
No,
when you
double
stream YouTube videos.
Double streaming is a mess with Discord.
Yeah.
I tried it once with you and Meow. It crashed fucking everything.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll go. You can't take over the stream and chat too. Too late. This is Cookie's World.
Watch me.
It's actually.
Watch me.
It's actually the whole channel is yours now. Actually, I didn't even. Yeah, it just says your channel now belongs to.
I've become the king of salt.
All right, I'm gonna dive back in. Let's keep going here.
Go for it.
There were very few instances of games meeting in the middle, which is to say, there were very few games that had both a solid regular narrative and a meta-narrative at the same time.
Just gonna pause. That is true that not many games do this, but it's kind of like I don't really see what the point is that not many games do this. I guess it's kind of a cool history thing, but
this is what made
Okay, I
Undertale
definitely
so
have
unique.
to
However,
pull up
at first-
Jaru's video on my own because the stream did not even catch up to you pressing play. So, can you just send me the link to the video?
yeah, hold on. Okay, and we're gonna.
Cookie has doubled the amount of videos he needs to make, I guess. True. That is the downside of taking over my friend's channel.
Okay, all right. So I'm at like 7 minutes and 33 seconds now. I'm gonna get back into it. I don't know.
Yeah, you
this
can go on.
idea
I'll
doesn't
just
seem
listen.
logical. How can you have both a narrative and a meta-narrative? Aren't they mutually exclusive? Either your story is about fictional characters, or it's about the player's relationship with the game. How can it be both? Well, you see, that's what's so clever about Undertale. In order to blend narrative and meta-narrative, Toby Fox took regular video game mechanics and integrated them into the lore of the world. Case in point, saving and loading.
Okay, I mean,
What point did you get to?
so 8 minutes and 6 seconds. He talks about how saying you can't have narrative and meta narrative.
Yeah,
and
that's essentially what he said, and that's dumb as hell. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be mean.
No worries. It's just a thing of like, I mean, I kind of understand. I would agree in a sense if you phrased it a bit differently. If you say that Undertale did it better than a lot of games, and I have not read Homestuck, which I'm sure will elicit boos from a lot of members of the audience.
No, don't worry. That's what I'm here for.
But I've not read
John
Homestuck.
Plush in my lap. Sorry.
Yeah, I've not read Homestuck, but I've heard that it integrates the meta narrative into the narrative very well. Like it combines them.
Absolutely.
And same with Jaru's point is valid in the sense of the what was the word I was looking for? He's valid in the sense that
you in chat.
But it's valid in the sense of him saying that Undertale did it better than a lot of, like, I think that, or sorry, not that it did it better, but it did it in a very interesting way by having the mechanics of the game, like saving and loading, directly linked to the narrative. I think that is like the next evolution of the concept of the meta narrative.
Sort of. But I would also have to play devil's advocate here, because the notion of saving and loading being part of the narrative or being part of the meta narrative already existed in RPG games before Undertale, and the first one that comes to mind is Witch's House, which is technically a terrible example because I don't like how it was utilized in Witch's House. But I don't want to argue against Undertale. I do think it's a great game. I do think it has a great narrative and meta narrative. But I want to say that I guess the way that Undertale is perceived is wholly unique, because Undertale got a lot popular than it was originally meant to. The reason so many people regard Undertale as the narrative and meta-narrative game is because it's the one that got popular. While there are other franchises, again, like Homestuck and kind of Witch's House, but Witch's House has less of a meta-narrative and more just a very convoluted narrative.
In a normal game, saving
is this whole thing of like right place, right time sort of thing.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I
Again,
guess,
not saying it did it bad, just saying that it wasn't wholly unique in its concept.
I don't know, like, I kind of disagree with that, because, yeah, the whole thing of, like, making saving and loading a direct, integral part of the universe is definitely something unique. At least, again, as far as I'm aware. Now, there might be that the quirky indie RPG made in Japan that sold 3 copies.
Yeah, the only other thing that's coming to mind to me is One Shot, which you already brought up. And even though it technically came out after Undertale, I think the concept for it has been kicking around since before Undertale. But I could be wrong on that front.
Yeah. Well, I think these concepts I think these concepts have existed, but yeah, I still feel like Undertale is unique in that it kind of brought a lot of concepts together and presented them in a way that not many other games had, I think.
That's fair.
Yeah. Anyways, let's keep going, because we're 30 minutes in. We're only 8 minutes into the video, so let's.
Yeesh.
Loading is a mechanic that does not exist in universe. When you reload your save file, it is largely accepted that this is not a power that your character actually possesses. It is not part of the narrative. It's just a game mechanic. But in Undertale, Toby made saving and loading diegetic. Diegetic means that it is occurring in the narrative and can be observed or experienced by the fictional characters. For example, Flowey used to have the power to save and load, but now the player and our characters
just kind of
have that power
here
instead. At the same time, saving and loading still works the same way it does in any game, allowing the player to reload old save files. But by making it both a game mechanic and a part of the plot, Toby has overlapped the narrative with the meta-narrative. As a result, anytime Flowey talks to you about saving and loading, it can be interpreted in one of 2 ways. Either he's talking to Frisk about the in-universe power of saving and loading, or he's talking to the player about the game mechanic of saving and loading. In effect, Flowey is simultaneously taking part in a regular narrative about Frisk and a meta-narrative about the player. That is the magic of Undertale. Toby stacked 2 separate
Hmm.
I'm at like 9:45. I
I'm
would
at
like to
9:33.
add.
I'm a little behind, but yeah.
Okay, then I sped it up a little too much. Yeah, go ahead. We'll keep playing.
narratives on top of each other and had us
Well,
experience
we'll
them
just catch up here.
simultaneously. And this layering is not limited to saving and loading. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Case in point.
So yeah, we can pause there. I think I'm caught up now.
Yeah, basically what I wanted to say is that he posits only two interpretations. The idea that Flowey is talking to either Frisk about the in-universe concepts, or he's talking to the player about meta concepts. I would posit that I believe in something that's essentially in between them, which is the reading that Flowey is using game language in order to communicate his personal feeling. He's talking to Frisk about real, like, in-universe things, but the in-universe things aren't the game mechanic itself. The in-universe things are his emotions and his way of understanding the time travel that he's been involved in, right? Like, he was given the powers to sort of transcend his universe by virtue of being something akin to a player vessel, but he's using the language of video games without fully understanding that he's in a video game, if that makes sense. That's an interpretation that's more psychological leaning, and I understand it's the less popular version because it sort of devalues the role the player has in Flowey's character development, but that's sort of my reading of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I fully lean into that as well. Well, because like you said, it does
That's
kind of
fair.
devalue the thing. But I definitely
Yeah.
understand that. But yeah, I kind of have this bit of disagreement. Well, because I definitely agree that it kind of lets both happen simultaneously, which again is one of the fantastic things about Undertale's
Yeah.
writing is you have these two narratives occurring at the same time. But I kind of
Alamander agrees with me.
yeah,
Yeah,
Flower
Flowey doesn't know he's in a game,
game.
he just sees the world as one.
As one. Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. Although there is one moment in particular that I feel kind of breaks that, and that's the post True Pacifist dialogue where Flowey talks to you at the main menu.
Once again, I would have to argue that it's an in-universe thing because he's specifically mourning Kara. Because Kara always has your name. Is that thing of like that entire thing of this gets further into Flowey psychology, but basically, long story short, he sees himself as a splinter of Kara's personality and Kara's actions and the trauma that they both endured at the hands of humans, and he's essentially trying to get himself to stop fussing about to stop fussing about Frisk and their friends so much and let them live their lives because he thinks that him being part of their lives is toxic and eroding what to what could be their happily ever after. So, again, the thing that's good about Undertale is that there is room for multiple readings of the narrative that are both meta and non-meta at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I think this is the thing I wanted to discuss is that that I think is going to be my contention with Jaru. I think again, I'm reading ahead. Maybe I'll be wrong here, but what I kind of think my contention is going to be is that like you can read Undertale on a level where the player isn't involved. And that's kind of why conceptually I have such an issue with this video, is that it just does such a disservice to the game. Like it's kind of similar to those I think I might have done this comparison before, but it's the theory of what if it was all a dream? Like the show Adventure Time. What if Finn is actually like a sick boy in the hospital and his pet dog, and all this is just a dream for him? It kind of does a disservice to the actual narrative Adventure Time, which is just such an interesting story when you get into it. Like it's a lot more comedy oriented, but there's just so much in it that's interesting that kind of gets devalued if you just see it as a dream. And that's kind of the same thing here. Is just if you fully disconnect the meta narrative, I don't think you can. I don't think you like. Yeah. Well, in terms of like
it's.
Oh, just to kind of say real quick.
If I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just real quick, like in terms of can you physically read through the story of Undertale, yeah, can you read the story of Undertale without any player involvement? Yes, you are capable of doing that, but it kind of does a disservice to yourself, frankly, if you're not, involving yourself in some aspect.
This is where this is the thing I actually wanted to add. It's that I think, how you say, the meta aspect and the pure narrative aspect of Undertale technically are separate in universe. In the sense that in the sense that Flowey is using the language of games to communicate his own feelings, while in universe he is not fully aware of the player. He thinks it's just Frisk, and that I think actually adds to the meta aspect of Undertale, because I feel like Undertale does something very good, and it's questioning the player's personal morality. And you kind of can't question the player's personal morality if there is something in the game that's actually aware of the player. Kara is aware of the player, and Kara is the only entity that's actually able to hold you accountable. Flowey can't hold you accountable because Flowey is still a victim of the resets. I think it's an interesting point to bring up, the idea that the narrative and the meta-narrative are intertwined. I think they are intertwined, but only so long as the player gets involved in them that way. It's actually something that's interesting about Undertale, is that it comments on the player's how you say, enmeshment in the story. If you choose to be emotionally invested, the game comments on it. If you choose not to be emotionally invested, the game comments on it. The game has a response to every possible interpretation of the story that the player could have, whether it's narrative, whether it's meta-narrative, whether it's emotionally stoked, whether it's emotionally detached, right? It's this thing of like, sorry, what did I already say?
It would be so funny if the stream just evolves into a massive group call with more and more people joining and less actually watching the stream, because Alamander commented.
Yeah. That would actually be really funny, because then our stream meta narrative would be more involved than Jaru's narrative of his actual video, just a time back. But yeah, I forgot what I was even like going with my point. Basically, what I want to say is that Undertale as a game has a very strong meta narrative, and it has a very strong narrative, but to say they are intertwined, I think is, in my opinion, would misunderstand the context around Undertale, right? Like, you can interpret them as intertwined, but I personally interpret them as separate, but intertwinable via the involvement of the player.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is where, actually, I think is a... actually, I was going to tie it into Deltarune, but first of all, I think we might want to wait for Jaru to get to that point. I think that'd be a better point. But yeah, I agree with that. Let's kind of see where he's going. Let's keep going. I'm gonna keep going here.
Throughout the game, Flowey implies that we are using a stolen soul to interact with the world of Undertale. However, what this means depends on which narrative you are looking at. In the regular narrative, he's implying that the ghost of Kara has possessed Frisk's body. But in the meta-narrative, he's implying that we, the player, have possessed Frisk instead. This is made doubly meta by the fact that Kara is the only character who we name in the game, and we are expected to name them after ourselves on account of us being tricked into thinking that we are playing as Kara. As a result, in the regular narrative, Flowey calling us Kara is him accusing us of being controlled by his dead friend. But in the meta-narrative, Flowey is calling us by our real-life name. This is because Kara represents both the fallen child and the player. This is why us meeting
I'm
Kara
sorry, what point did you get? Are you like a minute later, like 10:43? Yeah, exactly the same. Kara does not represent the player. Kara represents consequence. The idea that Kara represents the player specifically always grinds my gears, because Kara represents consequences of the player's actions, and that is very different.
I mean, I actually did read it a little bit differently. I kind of felt like, I think that Kara is complicated. A lot of people say that Kara's lore makes no sense, and I think this actually directly ties into this. It actually drives me crazy. I wanted to make a video on this, but it's difficult to talk about, and also I've had no energy for making videos. But people say that Kara's lore is bad, and I strongly disagree with that, because Kara's lore is just complicated in the sense that Kara, to me at least, represents multiple different things depending on the sort of route you go. With like, considering broadly of the three main routes: neutral, no mercy, and true pacifist. If you consider it like that, to me at least, Kara kind of shifts a bit, kind of representing meaning, where in the true pacifist ending, Kara shifts more into being a like the canon character, whereas the no mercy route, I would say definitely shifts more into being the consequence, kind of, but also representing the player's how representing how the players drive for completion, the obsession with this world almost has led them to destroy it. And that's why Kara talks directly to the player in the No Mercy route, is because that is the point where you have completely severed yourself from the game. You have completely detached yourself from the narrative. And that is why Kara speaks to you. Whereas in the True Pacifist route, that is one where you are fully engaging the narrative. And there, Kara becomes a character in the narrative because you are fully engaged. And so that's kind of how I've seen it, is that it's complicated, but again, in a medium like video games, I think it's totally cool for a character or a concept to take on multiple meanings depending on which way you go.
That's true. I would have a slight argument against the idea that Kara doesn't represent consequence in the True Pacifist route, especially with the Flowey monologue that you mentioned. Even though Kara is not present for that monologue, nor it's directed at them, but they aren't present for it. And because of that, Kara still in that scene represents the consequences of the player's actions. And it's Flowey specifically spelling out to the player that the consequences of your actions will be ripping away everyone's happy ending if you are so callous to take them back to the underground.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's my personal reading, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again. It slightly ties into my reading of Kara as, I'm so sorry to bring Homestuck into this again, but as a Prince of Time. Only Ruby will slightly understand that, and RD, because they're the only ones that I've explained class backs to. But basically, Kara's a destroyer of the concept of decay. Where in the genocide route, Kara sort of puts a full stop to your capabilities of degrading and ripping out the sense from the world, right? Your involvement in the story becomes an actual plague on the story, and Kara, in the No Mercy route, says, okay, no, I'm going to take what power you have, and I'm going to put a stop to this story. I'm going to kill through your killing, essentially destroy through your destruction. And it's this thing of people often misinterpret Kara as being callous or murderous or whatever the fuck, but Kara is essentially trying to save what sanctity is left in the meaning of the True Pacifist route, because they still reach the surface, right? Kara lets them reach the surface. They just kill everyone after that so that they can't experience being ripped away from that.
Well, yeah, actually, I just want to...
That's my interpretation.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say I really strongly agree with that. And that's actually what frustrates me so much about people who say Kara lore makes no sense. Is that they, even though they aren't really that present throughout the game's story, they are shaped by the journey, much like how the player is shaped by the journey. They are also shaped by the journey you go on. And so they're like, is Kara a murderer or a nice person? This character is so contradictory. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, no, they've gone on two completely different journeys. It's kind of like, actually hopping back to our collab for the first video we did, is it talking how we talked about Flowey at the beginning of the game versus Flowey at the end of the game. To me, it's like saying Flowey at the beginning of the game is a completely different character. Talk about contradictory writing, Toby.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're ignoring the whole character arc that happens over the game depending on the route you do.
I think the reason people find it contradictory is because Kara is a character that's not given the words to describe the arc they go on. Kara is a looming presence and a ghost before anything else, and that's why people struggle to conceptualize their arc as non-linear, because it's already difficult to keep track of what's going through their head, even in a linear narrative. Like, for example, what happened with their attempt to break the barrier through unaliving themselves. That entire arc, it's difficult for people to understand what was going through their head then. It's even more difficult in a narrative where they're not even allowed to speak, right?
Yeah. All right, well, we are going to hop right back into this video and keep going. And we got typing going on.
Yeah, no,
right,
Artie's the only one that understands me.
Route is such a mind screw. We are
I'm so sorry. I have a lot to say about the distinction between Sans and Kara as a Bard of Time and a Prince of Time and the way they interact in the narrative, but I will not hijack your stream for Homestead bullshit.
Yes, I would have to annihilate you with my orbital cannon, At that point, I apologize, but it would have to be done.
Maybe I'll have my own stream about Undertale classics. I don't fucking know.
I do like a good stream, but all right, let's continue.
Us in the world of Undertale. It's no wonder this encounter is only possible after we've effectively destroyed the world. We have to break the game in order to meet ourselves. And this sort of fascinating double layering of narrative and meta-narrative is found throughout.
I'm going to pause just briefly. I don't want to say too much on this because just slow things down more. But yeah, that you just heard our whole discussion kind of on that. I feel like that point he just made right there just completely misses the point that we talked about well, yeah, because he said, like, you have to destroy the world to meet yourself. Well, you're not quite meeting yourself, even in that case. You are meeting the character, but it's the thing. Like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm dragging it on too long already. But yeah, you only meet them when you do that complete separation from the game's narrative.
At any given time, you can read the story through either a narrative or meta-narrative lens, which is what makes this game so fascinating to experience and analyze. However, there is a catch to all this. You'll notice that, unlike in something like the Stanley Parable, which actively comments on its own narrative, Undertale keeps its narrative and meta-narrative separate. When Flowey is talking about saving and loading, he's either talking about...
Oh, doggy.
Where'd you pause?
Boy, I paused at 11:36. That boy, yeehaw, round cowboy. He says that the narrative and the meta narrative are always completely separate, and the point is that they both are so in lockstep that you can hop from one to the other at any point. They're in unison. Like they're again, they are separate in a sense, but the fact is that they're unified. They are parallel lines beside each other, and you can hop from one to the other and exist in a state between them at any point. And again, like, oh my gosh.
I think what bothers me is that Jaru is positing that the narratives are separate in order to then make the argument that Deltarune doesn't have a meta-narrative. Which I disagree with, but it's bothering me because he's using the language I used 5 minutes ago, which is to say that the meta-narrative and the narrative are, I do believe they are parallel, but not intertwined. That's the part where we disagree, and the part where I disagree with Jaru is his reading of certain things as being representative of the player when they're not. For example, Kara. So it's this thing of like, you're kind of wrong, but also kind of right. I have this, it's the thing about like broken clock being right twice a day, right? Like I feel like this is like the one time where the broken clock is right, where it's like, yeah, the narrative and the meta-narrative are separate, but they're separate in the sense that you can engage with one or the other or both, right?
Yeah, well, I just think, like, again, it's separate in the sense that you could engage in Undertale in a purely meta aspect, but again, it's what I brought up at the beginning, is that I feel like that just does such a disservice to not see them, how they move in unison and work in tandem. Anyways, I'm going to continue because I feel like I've slowed this down too much already, but ooh, doggy, ooh, boy, yeehaw! I've become Texan somehow.
About the in-universe power that he once possessed, or he's talking about the game mechanic. He cannot be talking about both. He's either in the narrative or he's in the meta-narrative. You can only
He's talking about both, though. That's the whole point. That's what I was talking about. The whole point is that you can interpret it in either way. You can't separate it as if a statement has to be just about the narrative or just about the meta-narrative. The point of good writing is that it has multiple layers of interpretation. And a big part of Undertale's thing is that you can interpret it as a player, and the game comments on your interpretation as a player. God. Okay, I agree with you. We both need to become Texan.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta keep going. We gotta keep going. That was like getting my legs waxed, like just a big strip just ripped right off. Okay, I'm warming up for the next one.
Or the other at any given time, as they are fundamentally separate concepts. We experience them at the same time, but just as a fictional world and the real world are different things, Undertale's narrative and meta-narrative are different too. Ultimately, the player has to choose which narrative to focus on. Determination is either a physical substance that exists in human bodies, or it's a psychological attribute. Either a superpower or a game mechanic. Kara is either a dead...
Oh, it's taken every fiber in my being to not talk about media literacy right now. It's taken and I guess I'm kind of doing it by even saying that, but it's...
I don't understand what point he's trying to make.
Oh, like you can only engage with them separately?
The whole point
That's-
of being able to analyze a work is to engage with all of its themes and multiple potential interpretations.
It's just like, it's so cool how the layers interact. Like that moment where Flowey says, if you reset, you're gonna take this happy ending away. How can you not? Like, how can you? I gotta be honest. Maybe this is just my opinion, but looking at that from a purely meta spec standpoint, that is such a boring line of dialogue. If you look at that from only a meta standpoint, I would consider it virtually meaningless from a meta standpoint, because he's pleading to Kara, who gets like no character development whatsoever. Okay, well, I know that's kind of contradicting what I said, but like, sorry, actually, I should rather say not character development, no personality. He's pleading to this person with no personality that the player is actively invited to project themselves on. It's kind of meaningless in a purely meta aspect. It only means something as the player. Do you have any idea? I have not touched my Undertale save file ever since that moment, because of how impactful it is for Flowey to look you dead in your eyes and say, if you reset, if you ever come back to this world, you rob us of that happy ending. On a meta level, do you, I think I mixed up my terms earlier, but anyways, on the meta level, the impact of that, the emotional impact, the level of investment in the world is so high. And to just be like, nah, it's one or the other. You can't do both. Oh, man, that is...
It's... I'm sorry, you said everything there could be said about the subject. I'm just still kind of flabbergasted.
All right, let's keep going.
Human child or a stand-in for the player. Both narratives are present, but they do not bleed into one another. There is a
Wait,
line
pause.
between them.
Either a physical substance or an attribute of the... Is that what he said?
Yeah, he said that... you're a little behind me, but yeah, he said that either a physical substance or an attribute, which, again...
But no, like, the localization note literally tells you the opposite. It's supposed to represent multiple things.
Yeah, but no, you can only read one or the other. Again, I don't know. I try to avoid this because it feels mean, but I think I kind of like have to say it at this point. Like, this is just not good media literacy, to be blunt.
Oh god, it's bothering me because I know what he's pulling up as an example. He's thinking about the fact that Alpha's experiments don't have anything to do with saving and loading. But I would have to strongly disagree, because the Amalgamates are the most fourth wall breaking monsters we have other than Flowey. And technically as Grantorial, but they're less fourth wall breaking, we're just aware. But like, determination as a substance gives monsters the ability to peer past the fourth wall. And I feel like that's kind of important for, you know, the substance of determination that he's commenting on, because the substance of determination isn't just a substance, it's also a property of the narrative.
Yeah, no, I mean... Good lord. Good lord. Okay, let's...
Also, can you tell me what timestamp you're on?
12:31.
Oh yeah, I'm way behind, hold on.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready to go. That is... Yeah, no, I mean, like, what, like... Again, it feels kind of mean.
At the visual of, like, barrier between narrative and meta-narrative, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, I guess to wrap up real quick before we get in. Again, like, what else do I even say? Like, that just... To be unwilling... I don't want to say unable, but unwilling to engage with both at the same time. Again, it just does such a disservice. It's what enhances the narrative so much. The
visual of him putting a wall between the narrative and the meta-narrative, I think, is in itself a commentary on the way he interacts with the narrative of the game. Because Kara is so fourth wall breaking, to him, they have to be an aspect of the player instead of them being an in-universe person, right? With their own wants, needs, and desires. Putting that kind of literal wall between two potential readings of a text, again, limits what you can do with the text. Interpretation of a work, if you're passionate about it, I feel needs to account for multiple perspectives. Like, you need to be able to say that the curtains being blue has a meaning, and also that the curtains are just blue. You need to consider both in order to have a more nuanced opinion.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
This divide allows the player to experience Undertale completely within one narrative or the other. You don't have to interpret any of the plot as being meta if you don't want to. There is a full story about fictional characters in a fictional world in this game, and you can enjoy that story in its entirety without ever contemplating the meta-narrative. You may forget about the meta-narrative in order to get invested in Alfie's and Undyne's relationship, only to completely forget about the regular narrative as Flowey corrupts the game's intro in his boss fight. Having both types of narrative is fun and unique, but understanding the barrier between the two narratives is crucial if you want to understand what Undertale is and how it works.
No, it's the opposite. It's
Yeah, okay. Okay, I do have to say, exactly because he gave the two events in the wrong order, I feel disproves his point. Because in order to be able to get reinvested in the Alphys and Undyne plot, you have to go through the gauntlet that is Flowey essentially shattering the fourth wall, right? You have to be able to understand that you are viewing this narrative from a different perspective than the in-universe characters in order to be able to help Alphys, right?
Like, again, I get, maybe it's like, I think this is just a hang up Jaru has, but like, chat, give me an answer here. Does viewing it from a meta perspective ruin it for you? Like, it doesn't ruin it for me. I can enjoy both. Like in fact, like I said, I genuinely think the meta narrative enhances the narrative and vice versa. They both build on each other and enhance it. This is reminding me a lot, actually, of a Tumblr post I saw where it was people talking about how can I get invested in movies because I know they're not real. And it's like, what? Like, literally, yeah.
Who
Being like, it was like a post of people talking about being like, they can't engage in fiction because they know it isn't real. And like, why would they care about something if it isn't real? And like, it's giving the same vibes. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's giving the same vibes of like, how can I be engaged in this?
Same but opposite vibes to me, because it's that thing of you need to find a balance between illusion and disillusion when engaging with a story. You need to find a balance between being fully invested in the universe of whatever you're consuming, but also find a balance between it and, you know, your real world and what real things mean in the real world, right? You need to find a balance of both, because if you lean too much into being overly invested in the world, you get a problem like Jaru's, where he's just completely unable to view both narratives as simultaneous because he needs that line in order to get invested into the full world. But the Tumblr post you were talking about is leading way too far into disillusionment, where they're unable to engage with stories because they're constantly thinking about how fake they are, right?
Yeah.
You kind of need a balance of both.
Like, I can understand almost to an extent, but I think it really depends on the story. Like, I feel like, I'm sorry, this is just the first example I can think of. I've never even watched or read it, but like, if Game of Thrones had a cheeky fourth wall break, that would ruin the narrative a bit. I think that's fair to say, because that's not the point of the story.
I guess. Okay, maybe Game of Thrones is a bad example because neither of us watched it.
Yeah.
But I do think it depends. I do think it depends on the narrative. For example, something like I don't fucking know, Mad Father. You have to get invested into the world in order to be able to properly engage with the story because it lacks a meta narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it also depends on the characters and the way the themes are structured, because something like the Amazing Digital Circus, even though it doesn't have a meta narrative, has fourth wall breaking jokes that work for its in-universe narrative, right? Mm-hmm. Because of the characters and the context of it.
Yeah, you have to match it.
It's very dependent, but I feel like that balance thing I was talking about, it absolutely depends. Like, finding that balance is specific to each story. For example, in the Stanley Parable, the balance isn't going to be, you know, 1 foot in the in-universe lore or 1 foot in the real world. It's going to be both feet in the real world peering into their world, right?
Yeah. So we got a comment from Logicom. Only if the meta-narrative somehow overshadowed the character we play as. If somehow player story would make Chris' story pointless, but I don't really believe this will happen in Deltarune. I do agree with that. I think that, like, if, you know, the player story, but it's very clearly a story about Chris as a character. I really doubt, unless Toby pulls the wildest 180 in all of history. It's very much about Chris, and like, we are almost secondary. Like, well, no, not almost secondary. The player is secondary to the story.
I stand by my interpretation from chapter 1 that the narrative is given to us on a silver platter, but the story is Chris's story in that it's Chris's purpose to steal it back for themselves from us.
Well, yeah, I mean, me personally, I just don't know, which I know is the most boring answer ever. I'm sorry, viewers. Like, like, there's just so much complex stuff, and that's kind of the thing that why this video, like, even though
No,
I
it's
don't
okay.
know where the plot
You're
is
here
going.
to be the guy that's like unsure and kind of on the fence. I'm here to state my opinions as facts and be an asshole about it. I'm the bad cop, you're the good cop.
But yeah, even though I don't fully know where the story's going, the workings of the story. I mean, like what got me super invested was the whole Spamton segment. Like that was
Really?
like, well, because just I think like it was kind of interesting. It was like, oh, what's going on? Like, but it was kind of hard to understand because the only real moments you get distinguishing between Chris and the player are at the very end of chapter 1. And
Yeah.
it's kind of, I feel like it's based purely on the ending of chapter 1. It's hard to kind of understand where that's going.
Yeah.
But with this, like the Spamton stuff in chapter 2, the thing that I love about it is how much it hammers it home, and also the narrative. Like I know you hate Spamton, but this is what I love about him as a character.
This is fascinating. This is fascinating to listen to.
This is what I love about him as a character is the way the narrative is portrayed. About it has just so much overlapping and like intertwined stuff where Spamton is projecting his thoughts and feelings onto Chris, and it just so happens that perfectly aligns with how Chris is feeling, or at the very least that's what the game Chris doesn't speak, but that at least to me how I interpreted it is
it's heavily implied.
Yeah, it's heavily implied that that's the case. And so you have this thing of this idea of freedom, and even though like Chris and Spamton are not eye to eye, but you can kind of see how that's being projected. And you can notice how, at least to me, like a thing that I find interesting is there's no dialogue that mentions. I kind of interpret it as Chris. A lot of people interpret that we are forcing Chris to work with Spamton. And I find it kind of interesting is that there's no dialogue indicating that Chris is trying to fight back against this. Snowgrave route aside.
Evidence to the contrary. I would actually argue that there's evidence to the contrary because Spamton asks Chris to come alone to his shop. But when you, as the player, go to the shop, there's no prompt to ask Susie and Ralsei to leave. Chris just does it on automatum. Chris wants to follow Spamton's rules and Spamton's plan. The player could fuck them up in that, but Chris takes the initiative and makes sure that we can't.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like that's a great example. Chris could intervene in some way, and yet they choose not to. And that's kind of, to me, what confirms that Spamton's projection actually really hits close to home for Chris. And I think that it's interesting to me that because I think also just for the drama, even though we don't really see it explicitly, I just think it's really interesting, is Chris feeling genuinely betrayed by Spamton, genuinely being hurt by Spamton's betrayal because Chris thought they were on the same page. But yeah, and then chapter 2
again,
especially.
That's also implied. I'm so sorry to interrupt you again, but that genuine betrayal is also implied because Chris's soul turns yellow. That's the justice color. Like, it's very heavily implied that that's what Chris is feeling.
And I guess that, like, it's so interesting as well. So I'm getting so distracted, but yeah, like, just that connection there, and chapter 2 also with Spamton really drove home the idea of freedom. Jevil talked about it, but I
had
think
a fucked up relationship with freedom.
Yeah, I think to me personally, it's so much more interesting to see him literally on the strings, to see him literally being a puppet, being controlled. And again, part of what makes Spamton so interesting as a character is, again, how I interpret him. I think he genuinely thought, which almost makes him more dangerous. I think that Spamton genuinely thought that he was helping Chris. I think he genuinely believed he was helping Chris. Because, like, again, some of the stuff he says, I think, like, don't you want to be part of my special heart or something like that? Or, like, yeah, in the end of the fight, he says, like, I like, after everything I've done, you're finally paying me back. He thinks that he was helping. He thinks that,
Yeah, yeah.
and kind of. Anyways, I just think that.
I would
Yeah.
also like to point to what Logicom is saying. I somehow started to like Spampton after Chapter 3 with Aram, Shadow Mantle Guy, implying Chris' issues with anger, those burning eyes motif. It reminded me of Spampton Neo Rage and Queen Basement. A little like if Chris got angry at Spampton because his behavior reminded them of their old problems.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I don't know what the burning eyes motif is. I'm only aware of the themes in like chapters 1 and 2. I completely disengaged from chapter 3, so if someone could explain the burning eyes thing to me, I would be very grateful.
Wait, hold on. Let me see if I can find the.
You don't have to find the dialogue, just give me the shorthand, like your personal interpretation. We don't have to dive too deep into it.
No, because that's the thing is
Oh fuck.
I don't remember fully.
Fuck.
You know what? We're gonna continue a bit from here. We're gonna keep going. I won't dive into that.
Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
I could do another stream, keep going stream on Wednesdays and do like Deltarune theory discussion there, or just to kind of Deltarune, or maybe just general game discussion. But anyways, let's press play. Let's keep going because we are wow.
It is this separation of narratives that is at the heart of this video and at the heart of Deltarune. You see, we must now talk about a little phenomena called the willing suspension of disbelief.
This is
What
actually
is the willing...
this is mostly what I was talking about when it comes to that whole like one foot in the narrative, one foot in the real world thing, because you need to find a balance between suspending your disbelief and having disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depending on the narrative, depending on the thing, but like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like
just pulling up a Wikipedia again.
Yeah. I don't know.
Pulling up Wikipedia.
Okay, I
suspension of disbelief? Well, Wikipedia defines
Oh
it
yeah.
as the
Oh
avoidance
god, I
of
didn't get there
critical
yet.
thinking and
Okay.
logic in understanding something that is unreal or impossible in reality in order to believe in it for the sake of enjoying its narrative. To put it in simpler terms, we know that fiction is not real and does not matter. We know that starships and wizards do not exist. However, when we choose to engage with fiction, we also choose to forget all those facts so as to allow ourselves to enjoy the story. This is part of an unspoken contract with the author. They provide us with entertainment, and in exchange, we engage with their story and enjoy it as if it were real. I know that a fictional character dying does not matter and should not affect me. But since I've chosen to suspend that fact in order to enjoy the story, that character dying does matter and does affect me. The willing suspension of disbelief is simply
Is that
our choice
Grumpy
to care
Cat in
about
the Year
something
of Our
fictional in
Lord?
spite of the fact that it is fictional. In the
2024.
case of video games, this consists of us forgetting that we're playing a game in order to get invested in the story. However, there's a catch. You see, part of this unspoken contract is that the author promises to keep their story believable and consistent within its own
Okay, I
internal
have to
rules.
pause.
If it violates these internal rules, then...
I'm at 1504.
1504. Oh shit, I'm behind. Hold on.
Oh. Chat, I don't think we're finishing this video in one stream.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So the thing that I wanted to say was about suspending your disbelief being necessary to like getting entertainment out of a story. I would have to argue to the I think games are the one medium where not suspending your disbelief can actually make something more entertaining.
Well,
if you engage with the game purely as a video game and not as its internal narrative, you could get more enjoyment out of certain games, I think.
Well, yeah,
Breaking them, not giving a shit. Okay, I might have to. You know what? I'm gonna leave for a little while because my sister is sending me frantic messages that there is a bug in the other room and I am the resident bug slayer. So I'm gonna BRB for a second. Sorry, chat.
All right. Well, I'll continue from here for a little bit. Sorry to get suspension of disbelief for pirates. That's fire. That's fire, Logicom. Hold on. No, you know what? I'm not letting you get away with that. That's pinned. We're pinning that. It's pinned. The way you two are going about watching this reminds me of how Mia and Ruby watch shows once upon a time. Yeah, no, we are tearing this apart bit by bit. But I'm going to keep going for a little bit. So, yeah, no, I think Jaru kind of already disproved this with, talking about the Stanley parable. But also, I think I know where Cookie was going, which is talking about games that you engage purely for the gameplay perspective. I'm trying to think, like I guess, I don't know, this is kind of a weird example, but like chess. chess is a game where you engage with it purely for the sake of gameplay. You don't need a suspension of disbelief for chess. You're purely engaged with it for the gameplay, and I think that that's the advantage that games offer. So I'm gonna keep going a little bit just so we can make it chug along a little bit, make some more progress.
And our suspension of disbelief can be damaged or destroyed, and if that happens, we'll stop caring about the story. This doesn't just extend to stuff that doesn't exist either. It also includes things as basic as human nature. If a character acts in a way that no real person would, that alone can threaten our suspension of disbelief. But wait, I can hear you say, what is the point of all this? What does any of this have to do with Undertale or Deltarune? Well, remember how the suspension of disbelief is all about forgetting that we're playing a game in order to get invested in the story? Well, what do you think happens when we introduce a narrative that's all about bringing attention to the player's relationship with that game? In other words, what happens to the suspension of disbelief when you introduce a meta-narrative? The answer is quite fascinating. You see, when you look at prominent meta-narrative games like The Stanley Parable or I'm Scared, you start to realize that they don't particularly care about the suspension of disbelief. This is because you only need that suspension if you are expected to get invested in a fictional world and its characters. But in the case of pure meta-narrative games, they don't care about their regular narratives. They only want you to focus on their meta-commentary. We see this in both of the games I just mentioned. The Stanley Parable is a comedy. Its main goal is to make you laugh, and you don't need
I don't know if I necessarily agree with this. I think that you can yeah, I think Undertale is the perfect counter to this, because unlike what he says, like, he just kind of asserts that you can't have both at the same time. But again, that's what makes it and this is, I think, one of my key contentions, is that's actually what makes it more immersive. That's what makes you more willing to suspend your disbelief. If you're part of this world, you have become a piece of the world. That's more engaging. That doesn't push me out of the world. That drags me further in if you tied it directly to me. So yeah, I think that's way more interesting.
To be invested in the world of Stanley's office building in order to be amused by the narrator's commentary. I'm Scared is a horror game, and horror has always had different expectations than other kinds of stories. In a horror video game, it's less important that the world be consistent and believable than it is to just be scared.
I really don't agree with this. I think that I don't know, I feel like a lot of horror games can work on getting you invested in the world and the story, and I think that they can use that horror to enhance that. And to kind of say that, yeah, they don't care about anything other than being scary, I think that that's kind of I think that's a bit dismissive. I think that dismisses what horror can do as a medium. I'm not a big horror guy, but I think that that's dismissive of the medium.
Gamers who love indie horror can attest that things like atmosphere, tension, and unique gameplay are far more important than the world being believable. I'm Scared doesn't care about your suspension of disbelief because it doesn't need your investment to scare the daylights out of you. In short, we can see from both of these games that having a meta-narrative does...
But I think it's actually kind of the complete opposite for a game like I'm Scared. Part of the horror is the direct contact with you, the player, directly involving you in the story. Like, when that barrier's gone, when you become a piece of the world that it's presenting to you, when you become a part of the game, isn't that what enhances the horror of I'm Scared? That you're directly a part of it? Again, I actually haven't played I'm Scared, so I'm sorry about this. This might be completely uneducated. But that, to me, is what would make it more scary, is to have that direct connection. So, I think that having... Like, I will agree that not every game can do this, that you have to be very specific with how you handle it. But I think that is something that you can do that is really impactful, is if you do it carefully and you do it right, you can make the player a direct part of the experience. And that enhances it so much.
Undermine your player's suspension of disbelief. But because meta-narratives are compelling, even without that suspension, it doesn't matter that it has this effect. The Stanley Parable is still funny, and I'm Scared is still scary, even if you're made aware of the fact that they're just games. They both achieve their goals because they put...
Well, no, but the thing is that they use... It's not about going all in on the meta-narrative. Is it that part of the experience, part of the humor of Stanley Parable, part of the horror of I'm Scared is being enhanced through the meta-narrative. It's not that... Like, it's not them fully committing that makes them work. It's them working with the format, if that makes sense.
All their eggs in the meta-narrative basket. However, this raises a tricky question. These two games dodged the issue of suspension of disbelief because they don't care.
Didn't play I'm Scared, but for example, Kinito Pet worked better if you really believe that Kinito is a real thing on your computer. This is why the game is mimicking the look of your screen. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's not breaking your suspension of disbelief. It pulls you in even more because of the meta aspect. Your disbelief isn't broken. You are directly connected. Like kind of by emulating, I think I'm scared is like emulating haunted software on your computer. You're directly being pulled in. That is a great point. Dreamer RD says, I'm interested to see how Jaru ties this into Deltarune. Me too, bud. Me too. This is going to be
about their normal stories. But what about games that do
Hello, I
care?
am
How do you
back.
deal with the downsides of a meta
we got you back. We got Cookie back. Yay.
Yes.
I went a little bit
Well-
further, but yeah.
Yeah, of course, as you should. What did I miss?
Basically, he talked about how like the suspension of disbelief and how games like I'm Scared and the Stanley Parable work better because they don't have any and they're not trying to. And comedy games don't need like to get you invested in the world to be funny, and horror games don't need to get you invested in the world to be scary, which I kind of disagree with conceptually.
Yeah, I also disagree. I'm Scared. You also need a suspension of disbelief with I'm Scared because it asks you to engage with it as if it were a virus, which it is not.
Yeah.
You got the game and there is a narrative, there is a meta narrative, but it still asks you to suspend your disbelief in order to engage with the meta narrative.
I the argument I was making is that actually by breaking or like by being a meta narrative, it actually enhances your suspension of disbelief. By breaking the fourth wall, it enhances it because again, I point to that example of Undertale where Flowey says, if you reset, that kind of reaching through the screen and grabbing you by the throat and being like, you're part of this. You're in this now. You're not getting out of this. That's more engaging. That doesn't destroy my disbelief. That gets me even more invested.
Lack of suspension of disbelief, once again, for the homesticks in chat, the aspect of rage. It's about thinking that the story is inherently stupid for trying to lie to you. It's about not engaging with the game as intended, with the story as intended. It's saying, no, this is dumb, I'm doing my own thing. Right? That's what not suspending your disbelief looks like. That's why I said certain games are better when you don't suspend your disbelief, and the only game I can think to give as an example is something like Security Breach, where the game is so buggy and broken and badly written that the only way to have fun with it is to not suspend your disbelief and just have fun with it as a sandbox game that's broken, right? Is that sort of thing of finding enjoyment in something doesn't actually have to pertain with the way the author intended, but if you follow the way that the author intended, you are automatically suspending your disbelief because you are ignoring the hand of the author.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. I'm at
okay, where did you leave off?
1802.
1802. Okay, that's not that far. Okay, gotcha.
narrative without completely sacrificing the regular narrative? How did Undertale keep audiences invested in fictional characters while also entertaining us with meta commentary? What is its secret? The answer is that Toby Fox did put both a regular and meta narrative in Undertale, but unlike the Stanley Parable or I'm Scared, Toby did not force the player to acknowledge Undertale's meta elements. Remember, Toby
but
wrote
he
the
did.
games that
He did though.
both a regular narrative and a meta
Because
narrative. But as a
Flowey
result of
breaks
this,
your save file. That's forcing you to engage with the meta narrative.
That's like again, and the thing I said, the example I gave of the end of the game where it's like if you reset, yeah, like that's again, like I said, I think it's almost more boring if you only acknowledge that from an in-universe perspective. If you ignore the meta aspect.
I think Jaru here is essentially creating a hypothetical scenario where someone would want to only engage with the narrative and not the meta-narrative. And I think that hypothetical scenario doesn't exist because the thing that makes Undertale good is the fact that it forces you to interact with the meta-narrative.
Well, I don't think it's hypothetical. I think that's just him. I think he just doesn't like engaging with both at the same time. And yeah, again, might be sound mean or unfair, but again, I don't know what else to call it other than just like not understanding the media properly.
I think it's hypothetical because he talks about how Kira represents the player, and in order for him to think that, he would have to think that there is a meta-narrative to have engaged with it to some degree. So I do think that he is proposing a hypothetical where someone would only want to engage with the narrative, or someone would only want to engage with the meta-narrative. But again, it's a hypothetical because you can't do that because Undertale forces you to engage with it.
All right, let's keep going.
It also means you don't have to pay attention to the meta elements if you don't want to. You can ignore the meta aspects of saving and loading and instead just view it as a superpower that your character happens to possess. This extends to all of the game's meta elements, as I explained earlier. In effect, by not shoving the meta-narrative in our face, Toby avoids the downsides of having a meta-narrative in the...
Not shoving it in our face, he explodes the save! He glitches out the intro. Like, I know that that's like the end of the game, but there's also like so many fourth wall breaky jokes. There's like... Oh.
Also, saving and loading is called out even by other characters before you learn that it's an in-universe superpower that is capable of being possessed, right? If you reset while in the ruins before you reach Flowey at the end of the ruins, Toriel, like during the call, comments like, "It's strange when humans fall down. I feel like I've already met them," and that forces the player to be like, "Oh shit, does she remember what I did?" Right? And that's a moment before Flowey reveals that he used to have that power. That's a moment that's before all the other reveals, which is, yes, forcing the player to engage with both narratives because you don't have the information that this is something that other characters can be aware of as a superpower.
Yeah. No, yeah. Remember that Jaru established that meta elements have their own narrative elements, so Flowey overtaking reset can just be explained in the save and it's by that save and lore power. I mean...
Yeah, but again, there's pieces of Undertale world building that, like, this is all shit you learn way near the end of the game, right?
Well,
like there's nothing...
I also, like, technically you're right, but also those lore elements are just so deeply and intrinsically tied to the meta aspects that I don't think you can ignore them.
Fair.
I don't know.
But you can ignore them if you're doing Baby's first reading of Undertale, but like that's a proper way to engage with the narrative that's like actually deeper than, I don't know, fucking... I don't know what's not deep. What's not deep? What's shallow? I don't want to say as shallow as a puddle because that's stereotypical. What's shallow?
Shallow as plate.
Shallow as a plate. That's a good one. Shallow as a plate.
All right, let's keep going.
First place, the meta-narrative is optional, and thus the game gets all the benefits of its clever commentary without sacrificing its fictional world or the player's suspension of disbelief. It's a genius bit of writing that played a big part in Undertale becoming the smash hit that it is today. However, as interesting as all that...
I don't want to stop too long, but I just need to say that is truly baffling to me, to say that Undertale became a big hit because you can separate the meta from the non-meta. That is wild. That is the exact opposite reason.
Yeah,
that is the exact opposite. Like, I genuinely...
If I may harbor back to what I said earlier, you can insert a meta-narrative into any piece of fiction. And Undertale specifically did so well because it forced conventional audiences to grapple with a meta-narrative they hadn't considered before.
Yeah. Alright, let's keep going.
You may have noticed that I've yet to talk about Deltarune. Well, don't worry, this all had a point. You needed all this context in order to understand how Undertale works and the dangers that it faced by having a meta-narrative. It strikes a brilliant balance, but it could have easily shattered our suspension of disbelief if it hadn't been so careful. Understanding the tightrope that Undertale walks is crucial to the discussion surrounding Deltarune. So, now that you've been briefed, let's actually talk about it. Deltarune is a direct follow-up to Undertale.
I'm at exactly 20 minutes. Undertale did not walk a tightrope.
No, it
It gripped your throat with a rope. Like it didn't.
And again, like literally, it's just a thing of like, there's not really much of an argument to make from here. I mean, we're gonna like maybe there'll be more points specifically, but again, because much like all of his theories, he has put forth an incorrect premise, and is building everything on the incorrect premise.
I would also like to comment on this praising of Undertale because it strikes me as not incorrect. Undertale did do a lot of things right, yada yada. I've just grown disillusioned with it over the years, but I do want to point out that this almost blind praising of Undertale as if it did everything right is just incorrect. Again, I'm dipping my toes back into Homestuck for a little bit, but a big part that made Homestuck work is that a lot of its narrative and meta-narrative aspects figured out in a walk. And I feel like making it out as if Undertale had everything perfectly planned and everything perfectly executed does a disservice to the craft that goes into figuring out these sorts of meta-narratives in a walk. Right? Maybe I'm just spitballing. Maybe I just don't like constant praising of Undertale. I don't know.
I feel like you are leaning into the hater again, but
I'm the hater. Someone has to be.
but yeah, no, I mean, I can agree in a sense of like I think people shouldn't get too wrapped up in like
Alamander says it hung you with the tightrope, and I agree.
yeah. I've been quiet on chat, but just so you know, when Jaru says something, I just exasperatedly whisper exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruby, that's so fucking real.
But yeah, like I do. Oh yeah, I do want to say I do kind of understand your point of like, because this happens actually. This is really common in the Zelda community.
Oh fuck.
Where games go through the cycle of a new Zelda game will come out, and people will be like, "This is the single greatest game of all time," and then people will go on, and then they will realize the game has flaws. And they will 180 to this is the single worst game ever created. And
You're
then
calling me out specifically.
and then as time goes on, they mellow out and they realize that every Zelda game is a good game and they have their own issues. Right? And so that's the thing. I think it's important to not
Zeitgeist build.
yeah, to not to not like I think like, I do get a little defensive because I think I'm worried about kind of swinging too far because I think Undertale's a really good game. It's really freaking good.
Again, good cop.
Yeah, but yeah, I will say you have to be willing to acknowledge the flaws in the game. You have to be willing to acknowledge the flaws. Again, I feel like we might be getting a little off topic, but I do want to say like one of my favorite games is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I don't know how many people in chat know that, but it's got some flaws. I will be very loud and vocal about that. It's got some flaws, all right? There's some issues with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't think... Yeah, I think that we have to be able to acknowledge that. And
you have to be able to love the flaws, I think.
Yeah, you have to be able to love it.
If something is really your favorite out of everything, you love its flaws rather than just hate its flaws. Which is why I have a love-hate relationship with Homestuck, because sometimes I hate the parts that make it good, and sometimes I love the parts that make it bad. Anyway, I will try to stop myself from keep talking about Homestuck. There should be like a counter on screen for the amount of times I brought Homestuck into the conversation.
Logicom said, "A video maybe is incorrect, but it's still cool to hear about people interpreted lore elements. The video even got debunked one time, and Jaru was very chill about it." I mean, that's kind of my issue, though, is that I feel like again, this is kind of just. I felt like this is a very telling moment, because it just shows. Again, like it's kind of tough because I talked about this in the last video. I understand how people would find it insulting to say that he doesn't understand the game. Because, like I said before, I would be insulted if someone said you don't understand Undertale or Deltarune. Because as you might be able to tell, I've invested a lot of time in these. So I would be a little insulted if somebody said I don't understand it. But at the same time, like, again, this just, to me, betrays such a deep misunderstanding of the fundamentals of Undertale and Deltarune, and, like, what they are about as games. And that's kind of, like, it's kind of difficult to approach that and say, oh, that's an interesting take. Because, you know, he's not really engaging with it. Maybe those theories aren't right at all, but I get immersive thanks to them. Jaru's pulling me into his little world of stories. I mean, actually, this is kind of what bugs me a little bit. I gotta be honest. This is what bugs me and what put me... Like, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but this is what bugs me about the theories. And, like, I thought of an example. This is gonna sound really harsh for some people, but I've compared Jaru to flat earthers before. And I've heard people say the exact same things about flat earthers. Where they say, well, you know, at least these flat earthers are being creative. At least they're thinking of new stuff that these scientists haven't thought of before. And they could bring a paradigm shift, this outside perspective. But the thing you have to understand about flat earthers don't care about science. they're not trying to propose new ideas. They have their own ideas, and they want to have them and keep them and deny everything else. And that's kind of my issue with Jaru, is that it's not enough for him to have his ideas and his stories. He wants them to be real. Like he genuinely seems really invested in this. He will argue and fight with people in comments about this. And so that's kind of the issue that I have with them, is that, like, again, it might seem unfair, but no, I genuinely, he's not engaging with Deltarune's story. He does not engage with Deltarune. He doesn't engage with Undertale. He does not understand them. And that's kind of the issue I have, is that
it's that thing.
He wants to do his own thing.
The suspension of disbelief, because he suspends his disbelief to the point where he refuses to look at the hand of the author as if it really exists. He doesn't actually give a shit about the author's intent. He just gives a shit about immersing himself in a world that he wants to be immersed in.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of that aside, the chat started talking about underage drinking. I find that really funny.
I love the actual videos going on with beef in the chat. I can't believe this. But your attention is not undivided on me. That's it. Because of this, I will be giving out, how many viewers are there? I will be giving out 10 drinks to under it. No, wait, that's not good. We're going to cut that off there. That's a joke. That's not real. Yeah, I'll have to get rid of all my morality first, then I can. Okay, whatever beef is going on in there.
Would you really need to? I mean, listen, Chaos is already morally dubious. Therefore, beating the shit out of him is technically only half of the moral dubious, right? Because you're half beating a good person or half beating a bad person, right?
What is... Okay, anyway, we're moving on. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I don't know, you might disagree with me on that, but that right there is kind of my core issue with him, is, like, he really wants his videos to be true. It's like, and it's so weird, and so I don't understand what he's doing, because in his videos he will play it off like he's really chill, but if you see him in his comments, he is very passionate about it, and you can tell he really wants to be right. He genuinely deeply believes these things.
To all the Homestucks in chat, I want to say that Jaru is probably a Hope player. I'm sorry, Salt.
That's it. That's it. You're going in the Torment Nexus. We're putting you in the Torment Nexus. That is you crossed the line with that reference, with that Homestuck reference. One too many.
Might as fucking well, man. At this point.
Let's continue here.
Features the same art style, core gameplay, and many of the same characters and themes. It's not a sequel to Undertale, but it is described as a parallel story to it, implying there's some connection between the games. This overlap extends to its approach to meta-narratives, but whereas Undertale was focused on saving and loading and how the player wields godly levels of power over these fictional worlds, Deltarune goes in the opposite direction. Undertale has one save file, dozens of different endings, and the ability to kill or spare almost any character. Deltarune has multiple save files, only one ending, and you can't kill almost anybody. Both games have a meta-commentary focused on the player's relationship with these worlds, but they are exploring different aspects of that relationship. Undertale is about those games where we wield great deals of power, while Deltarune is about those games that railroad us towards one specific outcome.
What point are you at?
I'm at 2113.
I'm at 2103. God damn it! How do I keep being behind? Anyway, I just want to comment on the comparing them as parallel stories. I think he is making parallels between the games, but I don't think these parallels are part of the meta. You can argue they're part of the meta narrative if you take in the context of the player's existing knowledge of Undertale, but that delves into the idea of para-narrative, or a narrative that's outside of the larger work and that encompasses the entire context of the work and the time frame it was constructed in, which is an entirely different story. So no, I don't think that the parallels between the games are necessarily part of its meta-narrative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, I don't know, like, again, this is kind of a tough thing to say without having the whole game, but I think that, like, the comparisons are more there to, like, heighten certain things and to help convey certain themes that were established in Undertale. Like, I think that it kind of plays on those ideas, and that's why you should play it after, because like, Deltarune is, like, heightening those and taking them in different directions and stuff like that.
I would say that only Deltarune Chapter 1 is heightened if you've played Undertale before. Because if you haven't played Undertale before, you have less context. 1 and less emotional stakes in the core twist of Chapter 1.
I mean,
But outside of that, I really don't think Deltarune is as much of a spiritual successor to Undertale as people have claimed, and as much as I've claimed in the past. Especially because of the way chapters 3 and 4 have gone, I've just completely gone the doomer route and saying that Deltarune is 100% a different both narrative and different meta narrative. Undertale and their parallels are like purely contextual narrative, if that makes sense, like narrative outside of the games and outside of the meta narrative, like it's like a whole separate layer of in our world the narrative of the games as to Creations by Toby Fox. Yeah, there's a parallel there, and that's where it makes sense to point them out if we're talking about our world. But if we're talking about the game's narratives, it's kind of nonsensical to try and point to the parallels as something that can indicate something about the outside of Chapter 1 of.
I just incredibly strongly disagree with that, because a lot of like,
Go
especially
ahead.
like I gotta be, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about saying 3 and 4, like Chapter 4 especially, with Gerson, like that was a lot of that kind of requires a.
No, Gerson was also established in Deltarune.
Yeah, well, he was,
Like,
but like a lot of the sort of stuff about him is kind of built up in Undertale at first, and a lot of kind of what he talks about, like
He's basically just Deltarune's version of Undyne, which is an interesting parallel again, but I don't think it's necessary to have the context of Undertale in order to be able to engage with Gerson as a character in Deltarune.
I guess not, but I mean, like, I think it's just so heightened, especially from the perspective of like.
We can agree to disagree on this.
I guess so. I just want to comment really quick that, like, it was something that it's something that I was kind of opposed to at first, but it's something I've kind of learned to love, because a lot of people, when they were theorizing about him being the knight, cough cough Jaru, it was clear that they kind of wanted that thing of like fighting him in his prime, when you never get to do that in Undertale. And I will admit, I thought, like, I do think that that's a cool concept, and I think that that kind of is like payoff almost in Chapter 4 of getting to see him being sick as fuck. I really learned to like him a lot in Chapter 4. I need to go back and replay
That's
it.
fair. Also, I will just give a fair warning. I might have to leave in like 30 minutes, possibly less.
Okay, that is fair enough. So, also, I just wanted to say, Logicom said, like, really, I know that when he did, like, 3 years ago, when Snellincher debunked him, Jaru was pretty cool. If I remember who Snellincher is correctly, I did not like his video on Jaru, because he was, like, sucking up to Jaru for the entire video. Like, every third sentence was, like, an apology and, like, praise of Jaru, and it's just so frustrating. It's like, dude, just criticize him. Just, like, just... You know, like, I understand that he might not feel the same way, the same level of negativity that I do.
Also, there's just a difference in talking to someone, like, one-on-one versus, like, arguing over text. Like, when me and Salt talk about this sort of shit through text, we get a lot more fucking heated than we do on stream. Like, there is a certain level of decency that is assumed when you are, like, talking to someone, like, as a person.
Well, I don't know if that happened, though, directly between them. I think it was over text. But like I said, I think the thing was... When that guy made his video, it was very apologetic. It was very praising of him. And, like, I found that to be a little unnecessary. Like, he might just feel differently about Jaru, but...
Logicom actually says something interesting to me. Finishing the earlier topic, maybe Jaru isn't really engaging with Deltarune lore, but he is for sure engaging with Deltarune community. Even though it is not important to know what is true and what not.
Even though it is important to know what's true and what not.
Yeah, even though it is. Okay, my bad, misreading. But I do actually kind of agree with that. That it's that context / para-narrative that I'm pretty sure I'm misremembering the actual name of. But basically the narrative that surrounds the text in our real world, right? The narrative that's built around a story in the real world. I think Jaru is 100% contributing to that, rather than actually contributing to the meta-narrative of the game itself.
Well, yeah, like, I think...
I think we can have fun with those cracked theories, even if they are more conspiracy. Yeah, there is a certain context surrounding Undertale and Deltarune and the real world narrative of them being those sort of like how you say cringe games that have like a ton of agents and are like a weird fandom. I think that they provide a sort of playing field for people to explore ideas around narrative and meta narrative that aren't really possible with other games with different fandoms. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just
Yeah.
rambling at this point.
But-
It's very late.
let's keep going.
These games
Yeah.
explore similar yet opposite ideas is really cool, and I think we can all agree that this should lead to another fantastic experience. However, where things get divisive is with the reveal at the end of Chapter 1. At this point in the game, Chris rips out their soul, puts it in a cage, and goes off to do unknown activities. Not only do we stop controlling them at this point, but we are specifically forced to notice that we can still control the soul even after it leaves Chris's body. What this shows us is that Chris is a separate entity from us, and given how violently they removed their soul, we can guess they aren't too happy about us possessing them. Now, at first glance, that seems all well and dandy. It's a cool mystery that we get to explore in future chapters. What could be so divisive about that? Well, you see, this is where fans started reaching a rather specific conclusion. Namely, people started concluding that the main focus of Deltarune will be about how Chris is possessed by the player. And do you know what we call a narrative that is largely focused on the player's relationship with the game? That's right, it's a meta-narrative. In other words, many fans have concluded that Deltarune will mostly or entirely focus on its meta-narrative, just like the Stanley Parable and I'm Scared. But wait,
Okay, I have to
just
stop
establish that
here.
Undertale
What
doesn't-
point are you at? I'm at like 2246.
I'm at 2250.
Okay, I'm just like 4 seconds behind. But basically, I do want to highlight that his issue with Deltarune having this sort of meta narrative is because he made that arbitrary distinction between a game that's mostly focused on narrative or a game that's mostly focused on meta narrative. Like, I don't see how Deltarune being a game that has both is a problem.
No, like, this really is kind of to me on the level of.
Let's just continue because
yeah.
I'm probably just rehashing the same shit.
Yeah, I just want to add real quick. This is really kind of to me on the level of games that have lizards in them are bad. Undertale has a lizard in it, therefore Undertale is a bad game. It's like, okay, well, we didn't establish the first part. You're building this on like an incorrect premise. Like, so
doesn't work that way. In that game, the player also controls a human, but who is controlling Frisk depends on whether you look at the narrative or the meta-narrative. They're either possessed by Kara or the player. This distinction, as you'll recall, was integral to maintaining the suspension of disbelief. If the meta-narrative was a required part of the plot, that would force us to acknowledge that it's just a game, and thus would shatter our immersion in Undertale's regular narrative. The barrier between the two narratives was critical to that game's balance. There are, admittedly, a few moments in Undertale that could be read as breaking down that barrier, namely when Flowey asks us to not reset and when Kara talks to us directly, but those moments happen at the very end of the two main routes.
Oh, he's calling us out.
It doesn't do any harm to our investment to bring down the barrier when the credits are already rolling. However, for 99% of that game, the barrier stays firmly in place, and that's the only reason that Undertale's regular narrative is able to function. But if the main focus of Deltarune is that the player is controlling Chris, and there's no other way to interpret this scene, then that is problematic. If this really is the central concept, if the meta-narrative is being shoved in our face, then that threatens to shatter our suspension of disbelief. Now, that would be fine if Deltarune was a game that didn't care about us being invested in its fictional world, but anyone who has played the first two chapters can tell you that is very much not the case. Toby Fox.
like, yeah, I'm just stopping real quick at
Yeah, what point are you at?
24:32. I just kind of want to.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to kind of quickly talk about it, again, it's kind of frustrating to me because again, part of what makes them more engaging is that I'm a part of this narrative, and I don't think, like, I don't know, I guess this might not be the best criticism, but I cannot understand this perspective of how being like, hey, you're a part of this world. You have, because like the way it's established with the whole Goner Maker section at the beginning, showing that you have been connected to this world. This is this connection that you've made. And you are, like, while you're controlling Chris, you're also very much just like an observer in this world. And I don't see how that threatens to break the immersion. It's like, I am just watching in. I have control, but I am essentially just an observer, a watcher. And where the narrative comes in, like, to me, I feel like there's already a setup for that, for an in-universe setup, that you've been brought in and connected to this world. And I don't feel like to acknowledge the player necessarily breaks down the story. Like, it just...
I have to be honest, I agree with both you and Jaru on this. I think this is the second moment where the broken clock is right. Because I do think there is a problem with suspension of disbelief. To me specifically, this is a me problem, I will admit, and Deltarune's narrative, because Deltarune's narrative specifically asks you to consider that the Dark Nerd's lives both matter as much as the Light Nerd's lives. They're also fiction in you. And I feel like that is an issue of investment to me. I don't think the player being part of that narrative is an issue of investment, because by playing a game, you already have a setup of a fourth wall, right? But I feel like the introduction of the Dark Worlds as in-universe fiction, you have a setup of an eighth wall, essentially, like a fourth wall squared. And to get invested in the Dark Nerds, You have to essentially suspend your disbelief to the point where you believe Susie has real emotion. And that, to me, is impossible to do.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think I just kind of have to say I disagree. I don't know if we can get into that, because that's going to be a whole... That's a whole other can of worms.
I have to leave in like 30 minutes, so we cannot get into it.
Fox clearly wants us
Maybe
to be
some other
invested in the
time, maybe
lives
some
and
other
stories
stream.
of these characters. The majority of the first 2 chapters is spent on their completely regular narrative. As such, we are left in a pickle. If this scene can only be interpreted as being a part of the meta-narrative, then that throws the entire regular narrative into the trash.
No,
We
it does
can't be
not.
reminded that we're playing a game and forget that fact at the same time. As such, that leaves us with 2
Wait,
options.
whoa. I just realized something. He talks about how... I know that, like, the ends of chapters are not exactly the same as the end of the game, but he says that the endings of Undertale happen at the end of the game, so it's okay for the game to break the narrative there. But for some reason...
When Deltarune does.
Yeah, when Deltarune does it at the end of a chapter, then it's not okay? Then it's
Again, he's
bad?
starting with that false pretense because Undertale breaks the 4th wall and forces you into the meta-narrative at several points before you reach the end of the game. So he's just shooting himself in the foot by even bringing up Undertale, as usual.
Yeah, yeah.
Either A, Toby Fox has lost his touch and accidentally ruined the plot of his game, or B, there is a regular narrative explanation for this scene, and the barrier between the 2 narratives that he achieved in Undertale is still present in Deltarune. This divide between these 2 options is
This image has been so memed. The throw narrative and the wood chipper, which again, it's not even really doing that. Like the whole thing about like the game's theme of freedom is so integral to the thing of like you literally controlling Chris. That is such an interesting aspect. And I think also, especially with how chapter 4 emphasized the prophecy and like the fate.
I have to ask, how does there being a regular narrative explanation for Chris ripping out their soul enhance the story of Deltarune? Because I have to say that having a regular narrative explanation for Flowey's outbursts does enhance the story of Undertale because it forces you to look into Flowey's psychology and consider his point of view more succinctly, and it forces you into the world of the game further if there is a regular narrative explanation. Because that regular narrative explanation is fascinating from the perspective of Flowey as a character. But in Deltarune, what regular narrative explanation can you have for Chris ripping out their soul that would enhance the themes of the game? Because the themes of the game, as you probably mentioned already several times, are freedom and similar things.
Well, see, here's the thing, is that it enhances Jaru's theory. It enhances the theory that Azrael is possessing Chris. And that's what's happening here. Also, we got a message in chat. I love the theorizing mindset of, I dislike this possible element of the story, therefore it must not be real. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good, succinct way to describe Jaru.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a thing. I will say, it could be a thing of Chris being possessed. But then, like, it just kind of...
Who would be possessing them that is narratively interesting?
That's,
right?
well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that it kind of just... It actually... We have throw narrative in the wood chipper. This throws Chris's motives in the wood chipper. It just, like...
Yeah.
So that's kind of the issue there. Let's keep going here.
Deltarune. Undertale is my favorite game of all time, thus I had complete faith in Toby Fox's writing skills. That meant I had no choice but to conclude that option B must be the correct one. The barrier must still be in place.
But oh god, I hate that. I'm at like 25, 45. I'm going full hater mode here. I hate when people deify an artist to the point where they think this is a good writer, therefore they cannot write anything bad. No, incorrect conclusion. Someone can absolutely write things that you dislike or that you hate or that you disagree with on any merit, even if you think they're a good writer and even if they made your favorite. Like, you cannot put an artist up on such a pedestal that you think, oh, they can write no wrong thing.
Yeah, well, I think
bad.
Yeah, I kind of would actually disagree to an extent. I get what you're saying. No, like let me explain. Let me explain here, because
Walk me through this.
I think what you're saying is not the intention. It's more so a thing of, which I think is a reasonable thing to say, of if this person has created something I like, then therefore basically it's the kind of thing of, if you can do something once, that shows it's possible for you to do it again. And if you create something good, I think it's reasonable to say, therefore I trust that this person is more likely to create something good. I think that I would agree with you if they said this person can't create anything bad.
But my argument isn't that they can't create something good, objectively speaking, is that your opinion of what they create must keep being good. That's my issue with what Jaru said. Because he's assuming that because Toby Fox made a game that he loved, that everything else Toby Fox makes after that has to be something Jaru loves. And that is incorrect. To me, that is such a fucked up way of viewing art, and because it's fully taking the artist for their word and saying you can write nothing that I dislike, and I hate that perspective.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I
don't get what you're talking about, because everything I dislike is ontologically evil, and everything I like is ontologically good, and that's my beautiful worldview. Alright.
I am in pain. Let's continue, please.
Let's keep going.
Oh God.
To narrative, some other character would have to be possessing them in the regular.
No, fuck off. I saw Azrael's silhouette.
My video titled "What is Rouse?"
I saw Azrael's silhouette too, and also the implication is that Kara is always controlling Frisk in the in-universe narrative of Undertale, which is incorrect.
Yeah.
Kara loses control of Frisk in most routes. The genocide route is the only route in which Kara has full control of Frisk, and it's the route where Frisk ceases to exist as an entity, because Frisk represents the narrative opposite to Kara, but that's a whole different story. But basically, he's just wrong. Like, the player is the person controlling Frisk in like 90% of routes of Undertale. Therefore, his entire thing about there having to be like something in universe that controls Chris falls into the water, because there was nothing in universe controlling Frisk in most routes. I'm gonna puke.
Yeah.
We can keep going.
All right, let's. So I got a comment. If someone made a lot of good stuff, you will rather think that they still make something good. Jar didn't say it's impossible for Toby Fox to write bad. He likes Undertale, so he thinks Toby Fox's writing will be the same. He will like it. So he thinks if Toby writing will be the same, he will like it again.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's sort of what you were saying too. I understand it from the perspective of giving someone the benefit of the doubt, but I dislike it from a philosophical perspective. Yeah. That's just me being a hater.
Reiterate this idea that some entity other than the player was involved with Chris throughout many of my later videos. However, it was at this point that I started to notice a strange
I love that he
pattern,
points out that his theory about Ralsei wasn't actually about Ralsei.
Well, really,
he literally says that his theory about Ralsei was actually about Chris.
Yeah.
Does he not see the issue?
No, I don't know. I don't know. It's. I feel confident in saying that it's objectively disproven that Chris is being possessed by somebody else at this point, because it's just... Yeah. I think I brought this up in one of my recent videos, but it's the discussion of narrative evidence. Does this work with the narrative that is being presented? And it just doesn't. It just, I don't see, especially now that we have 3 and 4, I don't see how it would fit in. All right, let's keep going.
Conclusion that some other entity was possessing Chris. They dubbed this idea Third Entity Theory, a title which came with a heaping pile of skepticism attached to it. They framed this idea as being some convoluted conclusion that made the story more messy, and thus wasn't likely to be true. This baffled me, of course, but at this stage I couldn't quite articulate why my conclusion was not only logical, but downright necessary for the plot to function. It wasn't until I released a video called The Gaster Files that I finally understood where me and the community were miscommunicating. In that video, I mentioned how Gaster couldn't have stolen my real-life soul because that would be applying a narrative to my life that I know isn't true, which would shatter my suspension of disbelief. This was a fairly minor part.
What? No.
What part are you on?
Talk about Gaster stealing your real life soul. At
Wait,
27,
what?
22. Are you behind me?
I'm behind. Hold on. Aha.
Holy cow!
Okay. So So where do I approach this?
Well, I'm gonna start off. like I'm gonna start off like saying the game is not saying that Gaster stole your real life soul. Like, oh my gosh, like it is presented that the soul is your connection to the game world. Like he didn't take your soul. There's a lot of
represents you in both games.
Yeah.
That's why it's transferred from Undertale
also,
to Deltarune. He didn't take your real life soul. He is using the representation of you to connect you to Undertale and Deltarune.
I will say there's a lot of heavy implication that it actually is still Chris's soul. We are just controlling it now, because of a couple things like Spamton's line. Do you want to be a heart on a chain your whole life? And like a couple other things, essentially that Chris pulls out the soul and like doesn't seem to have any extra souls within them. So it's not our soul, it's Chris's soul that we have gained control over. So yeah, he's not stealing your soul.
That video, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but
can
because
you
it
keep
was so
going?
early on in a video focused on Gaster, it was something that a lot of people saw. Shortly after, I released a video where I ranked Deltarune fan theories in a tier list, and throughout that video, I frequently mentioned how I didn't like a lot of the theories focused on the player's role in this story. That was because most of these theories were working from the perspective that the player controlling Chris was the only possible interpretation of this scene. However, because that video was unscripted, I failed to effectively articulate why I didn't like those theories. That was partially because this is a complicated topic that is hard to explain, but it was also because I assumed me and the community were broadly on the same page. Oh, how wrong I was. After the release of these two videos, I noticed a whole new brand of negative comments.
Why would you assume the community is on your page when you've already gotten backlash for it?
And took that to mean that I was just too stupid to understand the idea of a meta-narrative. They thought I was insisting on there being some other entity possessing Chris because I couldn't conceive of the idea of a meta-narrative focused on the relationship.
I don't know, man. Considering how you've not understood and forced a barrier in there where there doesn't need to be one, kind of seems like it. Sorry, I'm at 2849. I might be a bit ahead of you.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I like kind of seems like you don't understand it. Like I'm just being blunt. Like
I think I am giving Jaru the benefit of the doubt here and saying that Jaru does understand, but he's choosing not to engage with that. Like he says that he doesn't like those theories, and he says that, oh, I don't want that to be the only interpretation. He wants to impose his own interpretation into what he understands can be interpreted in a different way, right?
I mean, I guess so.
I don't know. To me, it's this sort of thing of like, he wants to live in this world, not be part of it as himself, right? He doesn't like that the player, is being involved in the world because he wants him as ego death to be involved in the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, like
sorry, I'm getting psychological here.
Yeah, no, but I like I said, I just genuinely think from the sounds of it, you're being more which is kind of funny actually that you're being more charitable than I am.
We've switched.
We've switched. I just genuinely don't think, because again, he just he just bluntly asserts that there is this wall and that you either engage with Undertale on the meta side or you engage with Undertale on the narrative side, and there's no crossover when the game is deeply enhanced and it's such a more enjoyable experience because they interweave with each other. Sorry, I got a comment. Chris' soul is somewhat interesting for me. Souls in Toby's games are always explained as the culmination of your very being. How can you reap out this culmination out of yourself and still be yourself?
I have an explanation for that, because Chris is a teenager and all teenagers have identity issues.
I mean, real though? I mean, true. Being a teenager is the worst. Sorry, I just have to add.
I was gonna say, we should force Jaru to play One Shot, because that is a game that absolutely forces you to have one foot in the game and one.
I mean, yeah.
If he can get through One Shot and understand the themes of One Shot, I think he would actually be able to better understand the implications that Deltarune's narrative. Anyway, yeah. I absolutely have to go now.
Okay, it was great having you on.
Thank you. Change the world. My final message. Goodbye. We should make Jaru play One Shot. That's it. That's where right. I'm going. Also, Homestuck for life. Bye.
Bye. All right. Now, where is the image? Okay. You're banished, destroyed, gone, atomized. Hey, it was great to have a guest there. I don't know. We might do another discussion at some point. But for now. Let's just jump into it. Let's just jump back into it. Yeah, but thank you very much, Cookie, for coming in. It was great to have you, and hope you have a good night. So, anyways, let's continue there. Let's see what we got going here.
Between them and the player. Or even if I could conceive of it, I couldn't understand the worth in exploring such a narrative. It was at this point that I finally realized what was causing this miscommunication. I had reached the conclusion that there had to be the separation of narratives so early on in my theory crafting career that I just assumed it was an accepted fact. I didn't realize that the importance of suspension of disbelief was something that needed to be discussed, much less explained. So when a sizable chunk of the fanbase labeled me as crazy and quirky for suggesting someone other than the player was possessing Chris, I didn't really get their perspective. I thought my logic was fairly sound, so the people saying it didn't make sense or didn't fit Toby Fox's writing style seemed rather irrational to me. It's only now that I understand people thought that idea was so insane because they thought I didn't understand or didn't believe in the idea of a meta-narrative. In a moment of absolute irony, by not overtly discussing the intricacies of the suspension of disbelief, I actually damaged people's opinion of my own media literacy. It is for all these reasons that I have made this video. I need the community to understand my point of view, and why don't...
And yeah, I think... I think that this goes on to highlight, this video has done the opposite and has gone on to highlight the lack of understanding here. Again, it might sound unfair to some, but I hope I've explained pretty thoroughly that he has artificially inserted this wall. He's determined that this is the one way that it has to be interpreted and just kind of asserted his opinion as fact, when it kind of shows that, yeah, you can't engage with it on multiple levels at the same time. And to me, I feel like that's a you thing. Hold on, we talking about Ruby beatboxing in the background of my next stream? That'd be sick, actually. That's some great background music. All right, let's keep going. We're close to the end here.
Focusing primarily
Not
on
really, actually. We're far a long way.
I need you all to see that while meta-narratives have always been a core part of Toby Fox's work, having it be an undeniable part of the regular plot is not how he rolls. He layers the two...
Again, just... not true.
Narratives on top of each other, allowing people to engage with one or both depending upon our preferences. That is why some fans love Undertale purely for its world and characters, while others love it for its meta-narrative about how people interact with games. Undertale is a buffet where you can pick and choose what you want to engage with.
No! Yeah, no, I really feel like he just misunderstood. Because part of it is that you can engage with it on... I mean, he's right in a sense that you can engage with it on multiple levels, but a part of it is the intertwining in these and how they enhance each other. How the meta-narrative enhances the narrative and vice versa.
Is not a three-course meal where eating the meta-narrative is a required chore. And Deltarune, in my opinion, is clearly the same. There has to be a regular narrative explanation.
No, like... oh my gosh. Oh. Like... It's hold on, let me scroll back to...
It is not a three-course meal where eating the meta-narrative is a required chore. And Deltarune, in my opinion, is clearly the same. There has to be a regular narrative...
Yeah, no, it's a thing of... I mean, like, I guess, technically speaking, you can engage with it on purely a narrative aspect. But, again, that's not a part of the full game. The meta-narrative is part of the full experience. Like... this is kind of like saying in a book, you can pick and choose what chapters to read. Like, in terms of what you are physically capable of, yes, you can pick and choose what chapters you can read, but you're not engaging with the whole story. And, like, it's just a massive part of it. And again, it is in your face. It is right out there, unless you're just, like, willfully ignorant to it.
Explanation for everything that occurs in Deltarune, as otherwise that regular narrative falls apart. I'm fine with people disagreeing with my theories or ideas, and I don't want to come across as condescending by explaining all this, but when the miscommunication between us gets so bad that people think I'm brain dead, that's when I have to draw a line and start explaining things and...
Okay, no, I don't think you're brain dead, Jaru. Like, like I said, I kind of understand that... I understand that it can come across as insulting, but, like, I understand to a degree that it can be insulting to have your knowledge questioned. But again, having your knowledge questioned is not calling you stupid or brain dead. And I'll fully admit, I get upset by that in the same way, you know? But having your knowledge questioned is not calling you brain dead. It's saying that it's saying that you are coming at this from a perspective where you don't have all the information. You're not fully engaged. And also, we have another comment from Logicom. Not that it's the only way; it's just the way he wants to engage with Deltarune. Also, this video is 1 year old, and after a lot of debunking in chapter 3 and 4, I'm going to assume you meant wouldn't be so harsh on present Jaru. I gotta be honest. I haven't really seen him change. Like, he's doubling down on the Ralsei is Azrael thing, even though chapters 3 and 4 solidly debunked that. He is doubling down on the like a lot of his points. He doubles down. I don't think that he really has changed his mind all that much. If I don't know, maybe there's a thing out there that I haven't seen that I haven't fully engaged with, but he isn't trying to portray it as the way he wants to engage with Deltarune. He's portraying it as either or. Exactly. I don't think it's even a thing of him needing to play the games again. I think it's just a thing of he's not allowing these parts of the games to meet. And again, he's doing himself a disservice by not seeing both at the same time, allowing himself to see both of them.
Exhaustive detail. With that said, you may have some issues or concerns with this entire line of thought, so I'll try and preemptively answer some of those concerns now.
Okay.
When you hear me say that Flowey can't be talking about the narrative and meta-narrative at the same time, that may inspire a knee-jerk reaction of, why not? If a real person could understand the subtle nuances of these two narratives and discuss both simultaneously, then why can't Flowey? The answer is, maybe he could. Flowey is, in many ways, a parallel to the player. He could save and load, he played through every route, he feverishly uncovered every line of dialogue, and he now just views the world as shallow and uninteresting. He exhausted the game of its potential, and now he wants something new. So the idea that he has
Okay, I'm gonna pause this. I'm gonna let him play out. I might lose my train of thought because I do have to take a quick break real quick. But I did want to say the issue here is that Jaru is approaching this directly from the perspective of, again, ironically, but not ironically, he's approaching it purely from the meta perspective. And the point, he kind of addresses the point, but is approaching it from the perspective of Flowey breaking the fourth wall and not at the same time. Whereas it's more of a thing of, it's not Flowey breaking the fourth wall and not breaking the fourth wall at the same time. It's about the player being able to see both of those perspectives at once. So that's kind of what I would comment here. Now I am going to go I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break here. I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back soon. I just need to take a quick break for a second. So hold on. Okay, everybody. Hey, yo. I am back. So, uh... sorry about that, everybody. I had to get dinner. I have my dinner right here. I'm going to hopefully not make too much noise. Let me know. I'm not going to be like chewing right into the mic or anything. But I've got my dinner with me. I didn't want to take a break for too much longer because I really want to get this done. So let's get into it.
Become self-aware of his world's status as a video game and now looks at it through both a narrative and meta-narrative lens is a completely valid interpretation of Flowey's character. However, whether or not Flowey is aware he's in a video game is unimportant for the purposes of this video. When I said Flowey has to be talking about one narrative or the other, I meant that from a player investment standpoint, not from a literal in-universe character standpoint. Flowey knowing about the meta-narrative is a matter of debate, but what is not a matter of debate is the effect a meta-narrative has on a player's investment in the regular narrative.
I completely disagree with this. I just don't agree with this. Like, that's your thing. You can't get invested in meta narratives, but that's not my issue. I'm fully aware, and I'm fully like, why are you talking about this? Like, this is an objective thing. Like, again, Logicom, you're coming in here, and like, I appreciate you saying things defending Jaru, but again, yeah, he's presenting this like it is an objective fact when that's how just he engages with stories.
Bringing attention to the player's existence, you force them to detach from their investment in the fictional world. As such, the only way to keep people invested in the fictional world is to either not have a meta-narrative or to keep the meta-narrative optional. That's what I meant when I said Flowey has to be talking about one narrative or the other. I purely meant that the two narratives must be separate, and not that Flowey is incapable of understanding the true nature of his world. However, that brings us to the second argument I can see people making. I keep claiming that the regular narrative suffers if the meta-narrative is the main focus, but how do I know that is the case? Where is my proof? Are there any cases of a game with both types of narrative that fails to achieve the balance that Undertale did? The answer is yes, I do in fact have evidence of this very thing, and that evidence is called Doki Doki Literature Club. There will be major spoilers for this game, so skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear it. I don't know this game at all. Doki Doki Literature Club, or DDLC, is a dating simulator that focuses on the main character preparing for...
So, like, literally what's going on here is he's like, hey, I didn't like this one game, therefore this entire concept can't work. Like, what do I say? What do I say? Also, I haven't played Doki Doki Literature Club, but I'm certain that there are a lot of people who would really strongly disagree with what he's going to say here.
For a school festival alongside a couple girls from his literature club. The narrative is focused on you befriending these girls and ultimately picking one to form a romantic relationship with. However, a couple hours into the game, this whole narrative has the rug yanked out from under it as Monica, one of the girls in the club, becomes self-aware. She now knows that she is a fictional character inside a video game. This knowledge drives her to begin editing the game's code in order to force...
Everyone knows that DDLC is an objectively bad story, obviously. Game famously being known for being wildly hated. Yeah, no, it's not like this game is really popular and really well liked or anything. This is objectively bad. It's not Jaru's personal opinion. Jaru, this is not a fact, okay, buddy? This is your opinion. And, that's fine. If you can't engage with it, that doesn't make the story objectively bad. That just means you don't like it. Again, this is... like, he really is passionate about his theories being correct because he cannot engage with it unless his exact ideas are true.
The player to be with her. She wants this because everything else in her world now feels hollow and unimportant, and only the player feels real. Now, DDLC is a pretty popular indie horror game, and it's certainly commendable for doing something rather unique with its genre. However, it does have one rather crucial flaw that tends to be brought up by critics, specifically with regards to the regular narrative. While people universally liked the meta-narrative focused on Monica, the regular narrative focused on the literature club is somewhat looked down upon. Not because it's problematic, but because it's unimportant. The main focus of DDLC is on Monica's meta-narrative, so having to spend several hours pretending that this game is a normal dating simulator feels rather pointless. Why waste the player's time on a regular narrative that doesn't matter by the end? Why spend several hours on what amounts to filler content when all that actually matters is the stuff revealed after the Monica twist?
So the issue here is that you got spoiled on the game and had the twist ruined for you. And you're saying the game is bad because... well, that's not the game's fault. Now, I can understand to extent. I think that a game with a twist, or any story with a twist, I think that it should be able to be enjoyed even if you know the twist. But I don't think that makes the twists bad inherently. And yeah, like, just because you had the thing spoiled for you, like, I don't know, like, from what I've seen of the game, there's a lot of stuff that, like, sets up this idea of this important, like, foreshadowing that goes on throughout the game. There's a lot of interesting details that happen that you might have missed. If you don't have the begging, the twist doesn't work. I'm sorry, Ruby, I don't understand what you're saying. But yeah, like this is a thing of, if you, like, you're complaining about having the twist ruined for you, which I guess by now it's become so popular that you kind of can't go into it without the twist being ruined. But I don't know. I think that there's a lot of stuff. I've heard that there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of foreshadowing that goes into this game. And there's a lot of interactions with the characters. And also, you need kind of that boring part to build up your investment in the characters, so that when you start, like, when the world starts getting crazy, you actually care about them. Now, Jaru would say that, oh, I don't care about them because I'm aware it's just a game. But I don't know, skill issue. So, like, that's all I can say. Like, I think that you need to have that more boring part to build up your investment. Yes, if you're replaying the game, maybe the game doesn't have a lot of replay value, but, like, and I think that might be fair, but I don't think every game needs replay value. I don't think that you need to have replay value to be a good game. I think a game can be a good, straightforward experience.
Criticism became even more pronounced with the DDLC re-release, which added a bunch of new side stories. These side stories were entirely based in the regular narrative of the DDLC world, and explained how these girls met and became friends. However, many fans found this rather underwhelming and uninteresting, as it was just building upon a world that ultimately gets thrown away. The problem with DDLC, as you likely guessed, was its failure to balance its narrative and meta-narrative. While the girls from the Literature Club are nice, and it's cool to learn more about them, it's sadly impossible for many gamers to care about them and their stories. This is because our suspension of disbelief has been shattered by the meta-narrative taking center stage, and with our investment in the fictional—
Like, I just don't understand that. I just don't understand that at all. Like, again, part of it is the build-up. The more boring, quote-unquote, I don't know if it's boring or not. I'm not a huge dating sim guy, and I've never played this game. But I can say from a story perspective, you have to have that build-up that gets you invested in the characters. And the meta-narrative twist that, yeah, they acknowledge it's just a game, but them being kind of sentient, and this world being destroyed by Monica, like, you kind of watch these characters you've grown to hopefully be invested in get destroyed, and that's why you have these scenes. Like, this is just his preference being presented, and he's just saying a lot of fans, a lot of critics. So you mean random people on Twitter? You mean random people on Twitter, right? That's like that's typically, if you're not going to back that up, if you're not going to show me that, then you're just saying random people on Twitter, which I don't care about people on Twitter.
World destroyed, it's difficult, if not downright impossible, to recapture the interest of those players. All they're interested in now is the meta content, so adding non-meta content is pointless to them. This is the price that DDLC paid by forcing a meta-narrative onto the player. It doesn't matter how fleshed out, likable, or sympathetic the fictional characters are if the player's investment in that fiction has been undermined. Hilariously enough, Monica's story perfectly encapsulates the danger of integrating a meta-narrative. Monica's entire character is focused on her losing investment in the fictional story of her world due to her becoming aware of reality.
Whoa! It's almost like that was the deliberate intention of the game. And if we see here, when the story actually complements what I'm complaining about perfectly, showing a synchronization between the story and the meta, like the narrative and the meta-narrative at the same time.
And if being made aware of the meta-narrative undermines Monica's investment in the story, why would the player be any different? It is this scenario that DELTARUNE runs the risk of facing if it chooses to focus on a meta-narrative. If it's revealed that this scene really can only be read through a meta-lens, that will do horrendous damage to the game's reputation. For context, DDLC is a really short game. The main story—
Jaru, you have said that the overwhelming majority of the fan base disagrees with you. Sorry, I just need to collect myself real quick. So, you have said that the overwhelming majority of the fan base disagrees with you. You have also probably noticed that they still like the game. So, it's not doing massive damage to the game's reputation. It's actually enhancing it, if anything. So, you're just wrong. You're just factually wrong. Like, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say, chat? What do I say to this? Like, he's debunked himself. I don't even need to be here. I don't even need to be here.
Story is only 4 hours long, yet even with that brief length, critics were still annoyed at having to waste 1 or 2 hours on the regular narrative. By contrast, Deltarune is over 7 hours long with just the first 2 chapters, and it's projected to be at least 20 hours long by the end. If wasting 1 or 2 hours was enough to irritate people, then imagine how they will feel when we spend dozens of hours developing a narrative that is ultimately thrown away. People would be outraged. Not only did the game get us invested in these characters for no reason, but it also wasted our valuable time. If all this happens, not only would Deltarune fail to surpass Undertale, but its quality as a game in general would be called into question. That is the timeline we are looking at if this scene is purely meta in nature. That is also why I don't believe it. I have far too much respect for Toby Fox as a writer to believe he would sabotage his own game like this. As such, given the options of A, Deltarune...
Yeah, no, I mean, again, this is just his opinion being asserted as fact. And saying everyone's gonna hate... No, Jaru, you will hate Deltarune. You will not like it. Maybe that will make the... Oh, yeah, so we got commentary coming again. Oh, good, he remembered to say critics again. Maybe that will make the audience retroactively forget he meant Twitter users. Yeah, exactly. He's talking about random people on Twitter and himself here. He's saying that he will hate Deltarune. And I'm sorry. If he does end up hating Deltarune, I'm genuinely sorry that he's not able to enjoy a great experience. Also, we have Chaos coming in. It doesn't need to surpass... Undertale. Exactly. Deltarune is its own thing. And this is something that I had, because a lot of chat people know, if you've watched my videos, I got debunked hard on like a recent thing I made before Chapter 3 and 4 came out. I got absolutely decimated on that. Our Darkener's objects. And I also was making fun of Gerson, like coming back in Deltarune. I was debunked hard. A lot of things I really, really did not want to be true about Deltarune became true. And you know what I did? I worked to address those things and to accept those things, and I learned to accept Deltarune for what it is. I don't love Deltarune for what I want it to be. I have issues, but I have learned to love Deltarune for what it is and not what I want. And I think that that's what a lot of people in this community, there are a lot of people who are super passionate about their theories. A lot of people need to learn that. You need to love Deltarune for what it is.
Being ruined by a poorly thought out meta-narrative, or B, Chris being possessed by someone other than the player in the regular narrative, I'm going with option B. And hopefully, after explaining all this, you viewers at home will too. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. To be honest, it is such a relief to finally understand the source of this confusion. You can only have so many people accusing you of being media illiterate before you start to get concerned, but I understand now, and hopefully with the release...
So, I just really wish that there was like a thing of self-reflection, you know? There's a moment of I don't know, maybe there was. I can't read his mind, you know? But it really seems to me like, again, he just kind of still showed that he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the game's story. And again, I get that comes across as harsh, but he really doesn't understand. He like getting concerned by people calling him media illiterate, and to me, it's like this thing of you were almost like if you could have just like self-reflected a bit and realized, you know what, maybe I'm coming at this from the wrong. Literally know that it's the kids who are wrong of the Deltarune theories. Again, yeah, Jaru made 2 arbitrary boxes and said things had to be one or the other to justify his own opinion. Again, he created this arbitrary dichotomy, made that up, and again, it's just showing that he doesn't get the narrative aspect. And that is really unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. I really wish that he would, you know, be more willing to engage with Deltarune on its level and engage with it for what it is and not what he wants. I think he is and he says that people are trying to call him brain dead or whatever. I'm not, man. I know you're not. I'm saying that you are a smart, intelligent person, but you are not engaging with it. You're not engaging. You're choosing not to. You're engaging with it in the way that you want to engage with it. And you're just not linking. This whole thing is just, I don't like or understand narratives that involve the player in them, so Deltarune can't have one, but he tries to make it sound like he's theorizing so it has legitimacy. Perfect, exactly. And yeah, it's just personal opinions presented as fact. And I really dislike that. I really strongly dislike that. And that's kind of why I'm getting passionate about this here. But yeah, like I said, he's not dumb. I'm not saying you're dumb. It's okay to kind of come at a game and engage with it in a way that, you know, like, it's okay to misunderstand something. And I know it's going to be offensive to him if he ever hears this, to say that he's not understanding it. But again, it's not anything to do with being dumb. It's just a thing of, you've come at the game with a certain approach, and the way that you're approaching the game is not connecting with how the game is intended for you to connect to it. I want that Sonic image about shorter games, but about Deltarune theories. So shorter Deltarune theories. Yeah, no, I guess I'll kind of wrap up and just keep going, because, yeah, there's not too much else I can say without repeating myself heavily.
Of this video, I will have successfully cleared up this confusion. It's fine for Deltarune to have a meta-narrative focused on the player's relationship with Chris. Not only is it fine, but it is explicitly what is going on, and I am not denying that. Where I draw the line is with regards to the distinction between narrative and meta-narrative. Just as saving and loading has both a regular and meta-narrative explanation, I am simply insisting that Chris being possessed must be the same way. I personally think they're possessed by Azrael in the regular narrative, but I'm absolutely open to other ideas. The only issue I take is with people insisting the player is the only character possessing Chris, while completely ignoring the consequences that would have for the narrative. I am open to other people's ideas, and I'm not so conceited as to think I'm the only one capable of discussing or understanding these concepts. All I want is for the community to be...
Okay, so you say that, but then you present your opinion on narrative and how it works as an objective fact. So it doesn't sound like you're very willing to engage, man. Like, if you come in and like, I mean, I guess, I don't know, you could call me a hypocrite because I'm presenting, but I think what I'm presenting is that there's more nuance to it. I'm presenting there's more nuance to this. I'm presenting that, like, I think, I don't know, again, you could call me a hypocrite, but I think it is different. Me saying it is an objective fact that you can interpret things in different ways is different from saying it is an objective fact that you can only interpret things in one way. We're not even going to mention the last second Chris's Azrael thrown in there for good measure. Look, if I did that, we'd be here for another 6 hours if I really dug into that. And I do want to say, in a recent Twitter post, he has doubled down on the Chris's Azrael. I'm fairly certain. I'm gonna double check. It's in his replies somewhere. I don't know, maybe. Where was it? I don't know where it is. Anyways, I'm fairly confident that happened. I'll try to find it later, but it's out there somewhere. Yeah. Anyways, wait, hold on. Actually, I think I might be able to. I think I know of another place. I can find it. Hold on, because I don't want to. Sorry, I know you're just kind of staring at a screen here, but I want to. So yeah, on the piles, yeah, okay, there's an image here. Actually, let me see if I can get this up. In chat. It's on the stream. We're gonna go ahead and... Here we go. This is, well, that's way too big. Anyways, here's Jaru. I know there's no proof of what video this come from, but you're gonna have to trust me on this. This comes from the Azrael's Dust theory. This is him doubling down on the Azrael's Dust theory. Right here. Doubling down on it. So yeah. Anyways, let's keep going.
And to be able to discuss these topics in a respectful way. Hopefully this video will have taken a step towards that goal. I've got a bunch of other videos, blind playthroughs, and lore playthroughs coming down the pipe, so I hope y'all are excited for that. I especially hope my patrons are excited. My never-ending thanks go out to all the people supporting me financially on Patreon. A special shout out goes to E-Roll.
Okay.
More, and as always, have a fan.
Okay, yeah, that's it. That's just him thanking his patrons. All right, yeah, no, that was quite the video. I knew that would get me upset, but yeah, no, I really disapprove of this kind of asserting of facts. And yeah, like, that's kind of the thing, is that he's never going to accept that he's wrong on anything. He never will actually do it. I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him concede anything, ever, at any point. Oh, no. You missed it. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, you know what? There's always the Saturday, the Tuesday, and I might keep up the regular Wednesday as a thing. But anyways, this is going to be kind of the stream for the day. I'll just leave on a black screen. We're just going to be here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was a lot of fun to have you all. I am going to be wrapping up here because, as I mentioned earlier, I've got my dinner now. I got to wrap that up. This went on for a little longer than I expected. I was kind of expecting under an hour, but here we are at 2 hours and 30 minutes-ish. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm not going to continue the Jaru series. I do want to announce that I kind of think I don't want to go to that well too much. I don't want to overdo it with the Jaru videos. I think that this is enough. I think I've had my fill. Because yeah, I think not many people watched it, but I had another Nintendo Switch 2 video where I briefly talked on this. I don't want to be like a Jaru grifter, you know? I don't want to grift on Jaru. I don't want my whole identity to become making videos about Jaru. So I did one video, technically two, but it was a two-parter. One video split into two parts, and then 2 streams. And this is going to be where I wrap it up for Jaru. I'm thinking about turning the... I might do more reaction videos, reacting to other videos. I might just talk general Deltarune theories. I'm probably going to put out a bit of a poll later to ask for your opinions, so keep an eye out for that. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. It's been great having you, and I will see you all next time.